Good evening. I'd like to call our special council budget meeting to order on Monday, March 16th at 6 p.m. I'm Mayor McNeil Smith, colleagues on council, to my far left, Councillor Novick, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Gurnett to my right, Councillor Duncan and Councillor Duck, and Councillor Rintoul is participating online this evening. Good evening to members of staff, large member of staff in support of our budget discussions tonight. Thank you. And good evening to members of the public, both here in the chamber and to those who may be watching the live webcast. I want to respectfully acknowledge that we're holding our meeting in the territory of the Wasanich people, the Sayote Nation, the Sartlip Nation, the Pakwachin Nation, the Sakim Nation, and the Malahat Nation. In turning to approval of the agenda, since it was published last Thursday, we just have one addition, and Council did receive earlier today a report from previous meetings, and tonight we'll be bringing forward the reconsideration of the council remuneration rate review, and we'll do that towards the end of our budget discussion. With that, I'd seek a mover that our agenda be approved as amended. Councillors Duck and Novick, thank you. All in favor? Sorry, I'll turn to Councillor Gurnett for discussion.
Yeah, no, I'm just going to say that I won't support the amended agenda. The item that was added late was about 12:30 this afternoon, and I think given that we've had some pretty good discussion around this item, but I think given that we've had two members of council that have not been privy to all of the discussion at various points in time throughout it, I think it would be in our interest to have them have more time to adequately consider the idea and the motion behind it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Gurnett is opposed. The motion carries. Councillor Duck, you're opposed? Thank you. And we'll turn to approval of the minutes from our special council meeting of March the 3rd. Councillors Duck and Councillor Novick. Any corrections to those minutes? Seeing none, those in favor? Thank you. Opposed? None opposed. That carries. Returning to public participation, where we invite members of the public to come forward to speak to council. This evening, we ask that speakers, given it's a special meeting for budget purposes, that you only speak to the budget this evening. That's a pretty broad topic. I'll, for a first time, ask if there's anyone wishing to come forward. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Appreciate budget time is never an easy time. Having been there myself, I know that weighing out what to keep, what may be discretionary is not always easy. I would urge you to consider not so much focusing on the percentage and leaving it simply as what are the benefits or negatives for the community. This evening, I'd like to speak directly to Kenora and Ocean Avenue improvements. I realize that Kenora is a multi-year project, but I would also like to say that it is a very important one. We have an incredible amount of kids being picked up along both of those areas for their school buses. Asking children, and the argument that was made in the staff report about the flight path is there. I think that's asking people to cross a busy Kenora and Ocean Avenue twice, unnecessarily, to use the flight path, get to their destination, then cross once more. I think it is in our responsibility to have safe walking space. We're looking at active transportation, and this is very much one. Ocean Avenue as such is perhaps not a huge demand for pedestrian walkways on the south side, but I would say certainly from the top, from Kenora, as far as, the first road escapes where the crosswalk is highly important. We now have a more developed playground, and there's a lot of use on the park there. And for people coming from Kenora, rather than going to the flight path, going down the crosswalk, crossing again and walking back up, that's really silly and it's not what people will do by natural habit. There's cars parking on the south side. I think it's important that we do have pedestrian safety really high in the ratings. And the other one that I just wanted to speak to that was in the staff report was the front yards will be reduced. People are assuming sort of the boulevard becomes theirs when it's theirs. That happens everywhere. Boulevards are boulevards, and you assume it's your property until the town says something. I realize it's a consideration, but I also think we should not give that a whole lot of weight. If it's important to widen the streets and to provide for safe pullovers for buses and delivery trucks, it's important we do what we need to do. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for coming forward this evening. I'll turn to if there are any other speakers. And I'll call for a third time. Anyone wishing to speak to council, please come forward. If just pop the mic on there, please.
Yeah, there we go. My name is Jamie Wellborn. I live in Sydney, and I'm chair of Capital Bikes Peninsula Local Advocacy Committee. While I understand that this is a difficult year financially, with a double-digit tax increase to chip away at, I am disappointed to see in this budget no progress for cycling projects that were identified as priorities in the ATP. Staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that at least one future project for drivers, the widening of Beacon Ave West, is planned to proceed without coming to and before council, operationalized, so to speak, while those outside the vehicle are left to fight over scraps. At a minimum, I would like to see the initial design and public engagement for the Amelia Ave and 5th Street bikeway budgeted for in 2026. I believe this is a reasonable request, considering that this was the next highest priority in the ATP after the Calvin multi-use path, which, by the way, was greatly appreciated for improving accessibility in the area. This new bikeway would connect existing cycling facilities directly to the center of downtown Sydney. Sydney has been moving in a good direction lately, so let's keep the momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you. And not seeing any further speakers, I'll close public participation. Thank you to those who came forward. We're next turning under item 6A, which is the 2026 budget. And I'll turn to our Director of Finance, Mr. Hissig. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. If you'll allow me a few seconds to get the slides up. Thank you very much for all the work that's gone into the budget so far. We are at the third and hopefully final stage of our process. Tonight, I'd like to start with a brief recap of where we are, some of the changes that we have seen along the way, introduce some of the key points in the staff report, give you a bit of additional info to support the budget that we're about to hopefully approve. And once that introduction is complete, I propose that we go through the budget by area, starting with utilities, water and sewer, moving on to capital, and then supplementals, and then general operating as a whole. Each one of these sections, when we get to them, there's a bit of an intro, and then we'll get into council consideration, if you will indulge me. As mentioned, we're in stage 3 of our process. At the March 3rd meeting, it was council's first opportunity to really dive in and start making changes to the budget, asking more in-depth questions. And that has certainly continued up until mid-afternoon today. Direction from the previous meeting has been incorporated so far into the numbers we'll be looking at tonight. And the goal, once again, is for approval of the budget. However, if additional meetings are required, we can certainly look to schedule an additional meeting And the timing of that will depend on the number of, on the magnitude of information that council would like staff to follow up on before we reconvene. So we opened up this year's budget process with a draft tax impact of 12.4%, and which included several new requests that council had not yet approved. Those are subject to council approval, and if any are any additional new items are rejected, that'll further reduce the tax impact. On March 3rd, council made a couple of slight reductions, which took it from 12.4% down to 11.76. But more importantly, council directed staff to report back with options on how to get it under 10%, and that has been delivered in the staff report. Quick recap of what was changed at the first meeting. 2 of these supplemental items were rejected. 3 capital projects that were tax funded were also rejected, and 2 were funded from an internal reserve, reducing the tax impact. All that said, we are down to 11.6 as mentioned. Very quick update on what that means to the average resident, and that's an increase of $224 for the year, or about just under $19 per month. It's a little bit different for the average strata property. Those tend to be assessed at lower values. Therefore, the municipal taxes are lower to begin with and ultimately, whereas for the average strata property, the change in our sewer parcel tax had a much bigger impact, going from $65 up to $100. An updated impact on the average commercial property of the 11.76. So we're looking at an annual increase of about $917 for the average commercial property. But if you take a commercial property assessed at the same value as the average residential, you're looking at lower levels of taxation. Obviously, the average commercial property is of much higher value because it goes from the tiny storefronts to the Amazons of Sydney. So it really drives up the average. And this is a bit repetitive, but it can't be stressed enough. Why are we here? It's a situation 6 years in the making. It started with our tax reductions in 2020 following the pandemic. We brought our tax impact down to 0. We reduced commercial taxes by 10%. And while tax revenues were reduced by a total of $576,000, our expenditure levels stayed exactly the same to ensure that the services would continue to be delivered. We knew then that we'd have to make up the lost tax revenue over time. And at that time, while we were in the thick of it, we thought it would be as early as the following year. But thanks to some grant funding, we had the luxury of spreading that out over a much longer time frame. And in fact, rather than gradually easing back, we chose to consume that grant funding, consume our surplus, and not increase taxes, perhaps to the level we should have. However, despite that failure on our part to gradually bring tax revenues up, we did add increased services along the way, mostly in the area of protective services. And in fact, this year, police and fire represent 5.4% of the current 11.76 impact. So expenditure levels kept increasing over the last 6 years, and each time we require some new tax revenue to pay for increased services, and we pay for it something other than new taxes, it kicks the burden down the road and making our challenge in future years more difficult, and that's where we find ourselves now. So the tax increase that we've been putting off is now due, and we've run out of mitigation measures to fund it in other ways. Quick reminder, it takes a reduction of $163,582 in tax-funded expenditures to reduce taxes by 1%. And each 1% savings is about $20 per year for the average resident, or less than $2 a month. And we have to balance these minor savings against the items we're cutting. Are the proposed services that we're cutting worth that $1.66 a month? We heard from 2 taxpayers tonight that definitely thought they were worth considering, that we should be focusing on the benefits, not just the costs. Municipal services have tremendous value to this community, and that's been borne out over and over in surveys. So if we are looking at reductions, the most likely sources where we might find them to reduce that tax impact are capital projects that are funded from taxation. We can replace that with reserve funding, or we can defer or cut the project entirely. Another source is tax-funded supplementals, and we went through all those in some detail the first time, but we're free to do so again. We can reduce transfers to reserve, and that is one thing that is being recommended tonight on a one-time basis. However, that does compromise our ability to fund capital through non-tax means, not just this year, but in future years. A few years ago, I would have thrown up the use of more surplus, but we're in a situation now where we really can't use any more than we are using. This should be the last year where we're taking a really big chunk out of it to phase back the tax increases. Again, the value for services in a recent survey, 86% of people thought they received very good or fairly good value for their tax dollars. And 62% indicated that they would rather see increased taxes to enhance or expand services or to maintain services at current levels. Yes, this was before last year's tax impact, but my strong feeling is that $36 over 2 years is not significant enough to change this very convincing response from our public. And I haven't added slides to the presentation about which services were seen as most valuable, but I think council might recall which those were. So it's a strong indication that people are satisfied with their value for money, and that they're willing to pay a little more to maintain what they have, or even to increase what they have. An update on the 5-year projection. So we reduced year 1 from 12.4 to 11.76, which in turn increased year 2 slightly. No impacts on the additional years from the 2026 reduction. So any changes in year 1 will impact future years, especially year 2. So if we were to reduce by a further 2% this year, that's revenue that we'd have to make up for next year, or cut expenditures to offset. So the items requiring review tonight, as mentioned earlier, I'd like to start with the utility budgets. I think we can get those out of the way fairly quickly. Then I would suggest we move on to capital, and then supplemental requests and general operations. And I realize that there are interrelations between capital and general operating, so while the presentation is designed so that we would essentially finish off capital before moving on to operating, I would suggest that we not do that, and the final council resolution to approve the capital budget as amended be put off until the very end, when we're also dealing with operating. For instance, if we make additional reserve changes, that might impact the capital budget. Therefore, it's probably best to wait and do them concurrently. So, following the opening summary for each section, we would expect that council approve changes to the budget by resolution, and subject to further changes, that once we're done with a particular section, that part of the budget be approved by council resolution. And there are resolutions on the slides that could be used as an example of how you may proceed. I'll quickly cover water and sewer together before we move on to deliberations. So the water utility, the increases for the year were essentially two items. The CRD bulk water rates went up by 7%, which happens to be the same increase we're proposing for our consumption charge. And the transfer to the infrastructure reserve also went up, as it does every year. So the proposed rates would see the infrastructure levy increase to $95 a year, the fixed charge increased by 50 cents per quarter to 25, and the consumption charge to increase to $6.86 per 1,000 gallons. On the sewer side, the major impacts for this year were our share of the unified treatment plant, as well as, once again, the reserve transfer. And this is funded, like water is, with parcel taxes and user fees. So the sewer rates review was just approved by council a couple of weeks ago. We have unified the parcel tax to a new rate of $100 per year, and we have new proposed user fees that were covered in the previous meeting, with the average annual increase per unit under this new structure of about $3.68. A quick summary of the changes from last year to this for the average single-family dwelling, as well as the average commercial account. So we're looking at a change of $9.16 per quarter for residential and about $10 per quarter for the average commercial account. So if there are no further changes contemplated on the utility budget, then I would entertain a motion that the water and sewer operating budgets be approved.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick, for taking us this far. I'll first turn to colleagues if there are any questions on either the water or the sewer operating budgets. Councillor Dutt, please. Microphone, yeah.
So to be clear, Mr. Hissick, the increases here are not part of the anticipated $20 a month you're indicating, so they would be an additional amount that the average taxpayer will pay.
Yes, utilities are self-funded, so these are either the parcel tax is billed on the tax bill, and that is part of the overall impact table that I showed, but the user fees are billed quarterly on the utility bill, and those are in addition to annual taxes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further questions, if I could look to someone to move the recommendation we have on the screen, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? None are opposed. That carries unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Hissick. Please continue.
I would like to now move on to the capital budget. So at the first meeting, 3 tax-funded projects were rejected. 2 more were funded from internal reserves, and several other changes were made to reduce the impacts on our diminishing infrastructure reserves. So the staff report addresses additional information that was requested by council in some detail, and it includes some recommendations for additional amendments that we might wish to make throughout the evening. And once again, if there are any further changes to the draft budget, they should be in the form of a council resolution. So one thing we can do to reduce our not only our future taxes, but also our need to build up our reserves is to have less aggressive capital plans. And can we do that? Of course we can. But right now, most of our capital is reserve funded. Many of our larger projects are based on council-endorsed plans, such as the Active Transportation Plan, the Parks Master Plan, etc. So on the ATP, council directed an average annual spend of $1 million on ATP projects, and that's money we did not have set aside. and we are running out of discretionary reserve funding to accommodate that level of spending. So if indeed we felt it important enough to carry through with that commitment, we need to look at alternatives such as potentially long-term borrowing. I think it's noteworthy that some community members were recently asking us about the status of our so-called master plans and wondering how much progress we're making and why. And now when they see the financial impacts, they're balking a little bit about advancing these as quickly as they would have hoped. So it is a trade-off. It's great to have these plans and it's great to put them in place, but you can't do it without impacts, tax impacts, I mean. So some of the larger capital projects can certainly be pared back, but not without service impacts. So Kenora and Ocean are prime examples that were raised just today. Do we have to do the project to the degree envisioned? No, but some people consider those types of amenities to be vitally important to our community. I mean, some might see these as nice to haves, but it's these amenities that make our community great. It's our job to balance the tax impact versus adding new and improved amenities, whether it be parks, active transportation, higher quality maintenance of our downtown and our parks, or what have you. It's these amenity improvements that make a community what it is. But again, you can't rely on external grants all the time to put these in place. Sometimes you have to just bite the bullet and invest in your community by front-ending it through debt. Perhaps this year is a bit of a turning point in how we look at some of these plans. And I think we knew this was coming, that we'd eventually run out of free money and that we'd have hard choices to make. And as we've indicated in the last two staff reports, at the staff level, we're very much aware of the need to really focus on our capital plans over the coming year, better identify the must-haves from the nice-to-haves, and come back to council next year with options on how much you want to proceed with and how much we can put on the back burner. I mean, every one of these people, these staff members behind me in the room today, are deeply invested in improving this community on an ongoing basis. They enjoy working through these master plans. They enjoy looking at ways they can improve the community, and they bring it forward for your consideration. Obviously, not everything can be done, and we'll take our direction from council as to how to proceed. A quick update on status of our reserves in 2026, showing the beginning balance with a few minor amendments following completion of our year end. Our 2026 contributions, our proposed 2026 uses, and some of these have been modified, the ones in red, in anticipation of council decisions that may ensue tonight. The tax-funded capital, as we've covered, 5 reductions were made, and we're down to just over 100,000 in tax-funded projects, with most of those being annual recurring projects. There's very little scope, although there is some, to use reserve funding to further bring this number down, and that's something for council to consider. If we are looking at potential reserve funding for some items, I would say the only options are the bottom 3 in the blue in the new project section, as well as the 2 red highlighted ones in the recurring projects. So there are a few recommendations outlined in the staff report, which would serve to help reduce the tax impact. And don't want to influence council on how to proceed, but this might be a good starting point for consideration, and then we could potentially move on to other questions that council had or brand-new considerations from the council table tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. I think the recommendations that are in the staff report and that will come up on the screen, like the ones we have before us, are our staff returning based on the motions we passed last meeting for this information and such recommendations to consider. So while members of council may have other capital projects or funding sources that they would wish to discuss, there is time for that at the end. If you feel that you've had further thoughts on any of these projects that are considered in these motions, certainly when we get to them, let's have the discussion we need to on those individual items. So if a member of council would like to perhaps take us through the first recommendation, we'll start from there. Councillor Gurnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that project PWG-26-006, that's pre-manufactured office module for Public Works, be deferred to 2027.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
No, staff has explained pretty well why they want to move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll turn to the seconder.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. So just through a question, but for the public's benefit, a question that I forwarded to staff was that this project was going to be financed by debt, and it was $450,000, and that would have incurred debt servicing costs of approximately $32,000 this year. And we're not saving that because staff felt that they could meet those debt servicing costs, and they weren't specifically in the budget. So while there might have been an additional benefit to having slightly lower taxes, 0.2% from debt servicing, that won't be the case with this project. If I could turn to, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. If I could look, Councillor Gurnett, thank you.
I'll move that $93,000 of CCBF funding from RDS-25-011 be reallocated to WAT-25-001, Weiler Water Main Replacement, to replace a portion of the infrastructure reserve funding.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers again.
Nothing.
No, I think we covered it last time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Councillor Rintoul, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And I noticed it was briefly addressed in the staff report and touched on in the presentation, but if Mr. Hisik could elaborate, there may be some, just to clarify, I mean, really the initial intent or the approach with respect to this was to suggest that the $93,000 could perhaps offset one of the tax-funded capital projects. And if Mr. Hisik could just reconfirm that on staff's review of that list, that there was nothing suitable, and that the suggestion is indeed to use this with regard to helping out reserve funding. Is that correct?
This can be safely reallocated to another capital project, and if council wish to make further reductions to tax-funded capital, there are other means that could be accomplished.
There are other means that this could be accomplished. So does that statement indicate that as opposed to using the 93K to offset a tax-funded infrastructure project, that staff would have an alternate suggestion to the one we're looking at?
Sorry, if I might comment for just a moment, I think not only through the staff report, but I think through some of the questions council members have asked of staff since the last meeting, we understand that there is other CCBF funding available to us to reduce tax-funded projects.
So in essence, what I'm hearing is then this is the best utilization of this $93,000 that staff are recommending.
That is staff's opinion, yes.
Okay. Thank you. I will stay tuned.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Garnett?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the vehicle replacement budgets be reduced by $285,000 for 2026.
And seconded by Councillor Duncan. Any discussion? I just want to make a brief comment that in the staff report, and we thank staff for the longer piece of information with regards to how the vehicle replacement budgets are managed. And I know at our previous council meetings, we've had some discussion with regards to staff looking for efficiencies. And I think we can see from that report that staff indeed are looking for efficiencies with regards to how our vehicle fleet is managed. And we saw that through this, we're actually connected to this motion, but not contained within the motion, is the removal of a need of $100,000 for a particular vehicle due to optimization or efficiencies gained in managing the fleet. So I'll leave my comments there. If there's no further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you.
This is an additional 3 recommendations from the staff report that council may wish to consider.
Well, Councillor Garnett, this was one that you had brought forward at the meeting. Did you wish to bring this forward this evening?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, I appreciate the comments from the speaker and public participation. This is the way to try and have something put in that area. But hearing the comments from the member of the public, it is something that I brought forward originally. It was supposed to be Kenora to EPCO, and I brought it Kenora to Barnes during the ATP process and had it moved up to number 8. But in the context of where we stand on the budget and trying to look at ways to, in the budget moving forward throughout the financial plan 27 to 30, as a way to help our reserve balances, I want to get something in that area, and I particularly think that the area from Barnes to Breathitt Park is the most in need of it. So that's why I was looking for this particular adjustment, and I'm prepared to move the motion unless you want other comments.
Yeah, I mean, this is a budget meeting. If you'd like to ask questions or express some views before the motion's on the table, but if we can do the same while the motion is on the floor. So please go ahead.
I'll move that the 2028 budget for RDS-26-004 infra plan Ocean Avenue West curb and sidewalk be reduced to $516,000 with a scope reduced to fill at Breathitt Park to Barnes Place only.
And a seconder,
I'll second.
Councillor O'Keefe, thank you. Did you wish to speak further? Councillor?
I'll just add to Councillor Garnett's comments. Ideal scenario would be that we could do the whole stretch, but at a time when we're looking for ways to reduce, I think this is reasonable for now to at least cover this very critical portion between the park and Barnes Place. So I'm fine to support this for now.
Thank you. Other discussion? I'll, hearing the public's comment this evening and giving it some further consideration, just to clarify, we understand that in terms of the 5-year financial plan, this is a project of over 1.1 million, approximately 1.2 million, and only $100,000 is budgeted for 2026, and that is for the detailed design for the project, and that the remaining approximate 1.1 million is the actual cost to construct that sidewalk all the way from Kenora to Barnes Place. And so we understand the rationale, as Councillor Garnett made reference to, that in reducing it by, I think it's 684,000, it keeps the reserves healthier in the 2027 to 2030 period when it would be undertaken. I have a question through to staff, and just looking at a map, although you don't have to look at a map if you've been in the area, that the section from Kenora to Philip Breather Park is much shorter than from Philip Breather Park to Barnes Place. And I'm just wondering why the cost is $684,000 for the smaller portion versus the $516 from the park to Barnes. Mr. DeMayor, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's, when you look at the map, when you're looking from Kenora to Breathitt Park, there's actually a portion within fronting Breathitt Park that doesn't have the sidewalk. So the division is basically from where the developed portion of the park is, where the playground is. Area to the west, the undeveloped or the forest area of the park would be part of that western project. That's why, when you look at a map, it looks like there's a discrepancy, but they're closer in length.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. So I'm comfortable. I appreciate the efforts that we're taking this year, and in particular 26, and giving consideration to the 2027 to 2030. But this restricts us, and the detailed design work. Another question through to staff is the detailed design work of 100,000. Is it going to be 100,000 or whatever portion thereof, whether it's designed from both sections or for just one section?
To the mayor, so we would, it would be slightly more efficient to have the engineering consultant do the whole section from end to end, from Kenora to Barnes. There's some efficiency there. It could be broken out. The first step would be to look at the various options, the subsections, and pricing for that to make sure that we're seeing this the way it's been presented. I'd also like to suggest that this isn't necessarily a decision that has to be made tonight, as the 2026 budget is for engineering design, and council, if 2028 is the project timeline, council would see the construction funds budget twice again before any capital spending happens for the project. So there's still 2 more rounds to make final decisions on what the scope should be.
Thank you. So I think I favor not supporting this at this time, and letting the detailed design work be done for the entire section. And as staff have indicated, this will come back to us in at least one more stage. And we know there's a lot of pressure on our reserves going forward, not only this year, but in future years. So I certainly respect this being brought forward, or the reasons it was brought forward. But I think for some flexibility, if you will, if we have the detailed design work done, which shouldn't cost a lot more than what would have to be done anyway, then we have time to decide in a future year. I'll turn to Councillor O'Toole, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Likewise, I appreciate the spirit and the intent behind pursuing this, and I thank staff for the additional information this evening on this. Also from public participation, I concur. We invested quite heavily making improvements to that park, and I'd like to see us maintain the momentum around improving, safe access to the park. So I don't intend to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Novick, please.
Just a brief comment. I tend not to support pushing major projects back.
So just to interject and clarify, we're not pushing this project back.
Well, all right, but for 2028, we're talking about reducing a budget. So I'm just talking in general terms. I don't support this particular motion. And one of the reasons is that I don't support typically pushing major infrastructure projects back. I think it's a false economy. I think it may result in very small tax savings for the current year, but then we push the burden onto future years. I suspect that our staff are not frivolous in putting forward projects for infrastructure in the town, and so if they've put the project in the budget, then I suspect it deserves to be there for one reason or another. So in general, that's my attitude. I think that it's a false economy. I think that when these projects finally do come back to the table a year or two or even 3 down the line, they end up costing us more. And that's not good for the taxpayer. So I won't support this. I'm looking skeptically at some of these others as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Novick. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Rintoul, Councillor Duncan, myself, and Councillor Novick, the motion is defeated. I would look for a member to bring forward the next motion, please. Councillor Keefe?
I'll move that the funding for RDS 26-003 Fifth Street curb and sidewalk Malaview to Amelia be changed from long-term borrowing to CCBF reserve, and that funding sufficiency for the Rest Haven sidewalk to Ardwell to Calvin be reviewed prior to the next year's budget.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Thank you. I'll turn to the movers.
So I think this is something, well, something that is, staff has recommended. My understanding of what we're doing is funding it through the reserve, so it's still going to be completed, but the source of funding is changing from long-term borrowing.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul?
Nothing further?
Councillor Garnett, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I will not support the motion, and those can be remember, I moved that it actually be removed from the budget, and we could help keep our reserve balance in the CCBF higher. So I still, while I appreciate the changes in terms of the funding source and the sidewalk, looking at the sidewalk on Arwell to Calvin, I still think this was an item we should have pulled out of the budget, so I won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I will support it. It's the number 2 priority for sidewalks in the active transportation plan. One of the busier streets, busier walking streets in our community that doesn't have a sidewalk on either side. But also supportive of it changing to the CCBF, which will save us approximately $30,000+ in debt servicing costs a year, including 2026. If there's no further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan, Councillor Garnett, and Councillor Novick. The motion is defeated. Okay, I'll look to someone to move the next recommendation. Oh, sorry, Mr. Hess.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry to interject. What just happened means that this project remains in our 26 capital plan, and there is no funding other than long-term borrowing, just so we're all clear.
Yes,
And-
we did have a motion to remove it, and that was defeated, so we're not bringing that back
Okay.
this evening. Thank you. Councillor Duff, please.
I will bring back the motion to remove it.
We can't. I'll turn to the corporate officer to speak to when a motion can be brought back for reconsideration by council.
I'm sorry, which motion are we talking about?
The funding for the RDS 2603.
Okay,
Let-
so when you reconsider at the same meeting, it's the person who was one of the opposed. They can
Sorry,
bring
this
it
is not
back
the
for
same
reconsideration.
meeting. It was a previous meeting where this matter was voted on to remove it from the budget, and the motion was defeated. So reconsideration at a future meeting.
So
Has a certain
I'm
time.
sorry, I'm confused. I thought you were talking about this one right now that we just did. No, okay.
No, not looking to reconsider the motion that just failed.
Okay,
looking to reconsider the motion that passed, that was defeated
okay.
at a previous council meeting. If-
So any member of council may make a motion to rescind that previous motion.
And sorry, in what time period?
There is no time period. As long as that is not acted upon, you can bring, any member of council can bring forward a motion to rescind if they would like to. Council can always go back to a past motion if they want to rescind it, as long as it's not acted upon.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff?
Just point of order then. So by rescinding it, then we can re-enter, engage the motion for reconsideration.
No. So rescinding a motion, it was defeated, but that doesn't change the motion. It means that the project would still stay in the budget. So a motion to rescind is not the same as a motion to reconsider. Councillor Gurnett, please.
Can I move to reconsider the item that's on the table for tonight? Is that
Yes,
possible?
because you're one of the opposed.
Yep.
Yes, you can, Councillor.
Yeah, I'll move that and if I have a second.
You need a seconder, yeah. Is there a seconder to reconsider?
Second.
Okay, and I'll turn to the movers to reconsider.
Just to make it less confusing. As I said, I wasn't in support of it being in there, but I don't want it to be long-term borrowing either. So I'll reconsider it and I'll go ahead and well, if I don't agree with it, I'll agree with the way it's gonna be funded. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duff? As seconder. Any further discussion? Councillor Duncan, please.
Sorry, I jumped the gun. You were asking for further discussion. Mine was further discussion.
Sorry?
I was jumping the gun there. You were about to call for further discussion, and I was going to have further discussion. So,
Well, go ahead.
okay, I'll go ahead. I'm just, I'm still going to vote against it simply because it looks that now one of these two projects, if this project is not being removed, but is simply being moved to another funding source, that funding source was going to be used for a section of sidewalk on Rest Haven, which is a much bit busier street. Having that little piece of sidewalk, I consider, it's actually kind of strange to me that we ended up with the priorities the way they are, because I think that would be a higher priority. And so that the funding sufficiency for Rest Haven sidewalk and Ardwell, that we might not end up getting that chunk done because we end up doing this one with those reserve funds anyway. I think, to me, the Rest Haven is a bigger project, so I'm going to still continue to vote against it to make sure that we have funding sufficiency for Rest Haven.
Thank you. So just, Councillor Rintoul, please.
Yeah, thank you. If the chair would clarify, it's my understanding that we first need to vote on the reconsideration motion that's on the table, correct?
Yes, we're voting whether or not to reconsider. So is there any discussion on whether or not you wish to reconsider? Seeing
No,
none,
I'm ready to vote.
seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor of reconsideration? Opposed? Councillors Duncan and Novick, we will reconsider. So the motion is on the floor. It doesn't have to be moved again. And Councillor Duncan, did you have anything further to add on the motion that's now back on the floor? Are there any other speakers? I'll speak very briefly to say that with regards to the Rest Haven sidewalk between Ardwell and Calvin, I'm not in favor of that priority, because it's a roadway with a well-used sidewalk already on one side of the street. We know when the active transportation plan came forward to council that there was 3 or 4 busy streets with a recommendation, and in some cases a high priority for a second sidewalk on the street. And the reason is because they are transit routes. And we had the residents of Ardwell come forward to us, was very strongly opposed to having a second sidewalk on Ardwell, just because it was a bus route that it seemed to function. And we removed it from the active transportation plan altogether. And my preference is actually to see a section of streets such as 5th Street between Malaview and Amelia that doesn't have a sidewalk, or Calvin that doesn't have a sidewalk, or Amelia that doesn't have a sidewalk between West Haven and Third Street. I would prefer to see those as priorities versus how the consultants set priorities based on bus routes. But that's for a discussion, I think, quite frankly, now, given where we are in this term for the next council, in advance of the budget for the next year. So I just want to speak to that now about, I do appreciate that there may be some concern about the funding sufficiency, and I respect that, but those are my views with regards to the nature of sidewalk improvements. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Novick, the motion carries. Thank you. And we have the motion at the bottom of the screen. If somebody would like to move that, please.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'll move that the budget for FIR-08-004 Fire Vehicle Replacement Plan be amended to reflect $192,600 in 2026 and $1.7 million in 2029.
Second.
Thank you. Alternative movers?
Nothing to add.
And please, Councillor Duck.
Nothing to add.
Thank you. Just a question through to staff. There are no tax impacts for this, as I understand it?
Not at this time. The transfer to the fire vehicle reserve is increasing by a modest amount over the next 2 years, I believe, and then it'll stay at that level until further notice. We think that is the level it needs to be at.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Thank you. That carries unanimous. I'll turn back to Mr. Hisik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the end note, if you will, of the capital budget that I referred to earlier that we might want to postpone until the conclusion of the meeting in case any changes we make to operating have a knock-on effect on capital.
Thank you. Are there other capital projects that members of council would like to discuss? Councillor O'Keefe?
Well, I did have some, but I wasn't sure if we were waiting until we were gonna go through the supplementaries as well, or wanted, in terms of pulling things out, just
Sure.
seeking clarity.
I'm going to turn back to Mr. Hisik for a moment.
We are still on capital, therefore if there are capital-related questions or motions, now would be a good time.
Yeah, we're going to go on to operating after this, so any other capital projects, whether they're supplemental or within the capital budget?
Okay.
Sorry, the supplemental requests are operating budget items, and there are capital budgets. So, Mr. Hisik, if there was discussion with regards to other supplemental requests and changing the funding sources, which might involve reserves that we typically associate with capital, is now the appropriate time to do that? Or should we do it when we get to the other operating after this?
I would suggest, and it's entirely at your discretion, that we cover all known questions about capital projects now. And if we need to revisit based on changes we make in operating later, then we reopen it.
Thank you. So we'll stay with capital, and if you want to discuss, are there supplementals that you wish to discuss at some point?
Yes, and so the only reason I'm waffling is because some of what I'm propose involves both supplemental and capital to replace other projects. So I just thought it might be easier to do it at the same time.
Okay, while you have the floor,
Okay.
I will note, while you have the floor, if you want to go with the first one, and we'll see if now is the right time.
Oh, actually, I could do this one as both capital. So I'll make a motion to fund the following out of the amenity reserve. The artsy building repairs.
Okay, so I'll stop there. So
Okay.
while reserves are typically associated with capital, you're making reference to supplemental. No?
No,
Those are capital?
these are both capital.
Please go ahead.
Right. Okay, so to fund the following out of the amenity reserve, the Artsy building repairs at 15,000, and the Veterans Crosswalk at 10,000, for a total of 25,000 to come out of the amenity reserve. And those were previously tax-funded items.
Okay, so could you just quickly say the two projects again, please?
The Artsy building repairs
And the amount?
for 15,000.
Yep.
And then the Veterans Crosswalk at 10,000.
Do we have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Rintoul, second. I'll turn to the movers.
Yeah, sure, if we're looking for ways to reduce tax funded, this is one way, and this, ran this by staff earlier today. In our amenity fund is fairly healthy. In addition, we have several development underway, so there's the possibility of receiving additional amenity funds in the coming year. And I think both of these items meet the criteria of a public amenity in terms of improvement or a contribution that can enhance the quality of life for the community.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul?
Thank you. I'll concur. I feel like perhaps the Rotary Park equipment shed repairs in the amount of $10,000 might equally have applied, but I'm supportive of what's been suggested. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Please go ahead if it's...
So this, I'll turn my attention to the Seaport Park stairwell to the beach, which is 20,000. And what I would propose is that the dog area for 40,000 be removed from the land sale reserve, and that
Sorry, that the project be removed for 2026 and that the land sale reserve...
from the land sale. So currently, the dog area that is planned is to be funded out of the land sale
It's a
reserve.
capital project to be funded out of the land sale in 2026? Yes.
Yes, so I'm proposing that we pull that project from being funded from the land sale reserve, and instead that we fund from that reserve the Seaport Park stairwell to the beach, which is 20,000, and then,
Sorry, I just need
Okay.
to see clarification.
okay,
Forgive me, but in terms of the dog park for 40,000, are you removing that from the 2026 budget?
yes,
Thank you. So I think that should be included in the
Okay.
motion.
okay, so that the dog area be pulled from the budget for 2026, and that the Seaport Park stairwell to the beach for 20,000 be funded from the land sale reserve.
Do we have a seconder?
Second for discussion.
Thank you. So just to appreciate that, there are two things here. One is wanting to reduce a tax-funded project for $20,000, but the other is the consequence of removing a capital project from the capital plan. So if you could speak to both of those, Councillor.
So again, the removing it from the 2026 plan doesn't mean that we're not necessarily going to do it. But if we're looking for ways to reduce our tax impact, I think this is a reasonable approach. The dog park that is planned at Iroquois is something that came up recently. It's a it is a lower priority in terms of other parks priorities that are in our plan. So I don't think that it's unreasonable to set that aside for now. The other parts, there's still another 20,000 left in that land sale reserve. And so just thinking ahead, there's two other supplemental items that we'll get to later. The Rotary Park equipment storage and the refurbishing the gazebo. So those two projects are $18,000 in supplementals. So those supplementals and the Seaport Park stairwell would absorb most of that 40,000.
Okay, so may I ask, Councillor, why in your motion you didn't reference all three projects being funded from, because one's a capital and the other two are supplemental?
Yeah, so that's what that's what my waffling about was earlier, was because I didn't know whether it was appropriate to be talking about both capital and supplementals at the same time.
No, I appreciate you keeping them separate and explaining your rationale, so.
So is it preferable for me to, and it might, I don't know if it would impact council's decision if they knew that the result of taking that $40,000 out would result in $38,000 total of previously tax-funded projects.
Okay, I'm going to turn to staff, perhaps Mr. Hissick or others. Do you have any concern with this motion containing both the capital project and supplementals?
No concerns.
Thank you. So why don't you just amend the motion to?
Okay. All right, so we'll start again. And I will move that the dog area for 40,000 be removed from the 2026 capital budget. And in that we fund the following from the land sale reserve. Seaport Park stairwell to the beach, 20,000. Rotary Park equipment storage for 10,000. And refurbish the gazebo for 8,000, for a total of $38,000 in supplementals and capital that were previously tax funded.
Do we have a seconder?
Second for discussion.
Thank you, Councillor. Did you wish to motivate further?
I think I've covered it. Basically, looking for ways for us to reduce our tax funded, and these are projects that all need to go forward, and this is one way, just by putting the dog park off for a little while longer to achieve that.
Thank you. Councillor Duff? Okay, thank you. Councillor Gurnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to Councillor O'Keefe, I wonder if you might be open to a friendly amendment. Having spoken with Mr. Hissick earlier, we recently found out that the pathway between John Place and Beacon Avenue West, the $60,000 that was coming from amenity is not required any longer because it's going to be a developer covered. So we could cover the dog park out of amenity, 40,000, and just redistribute that 40,000 from a land sale for what you want to do without actually having to pull the dog park out of the budget.
I guess when I was looking at the response from staff on that, I got the feeling that they were more inclined for us to leave that 60K in the budget for now. So that would be, or to leave that 60,000 in the amenity budget for the time being.
Okay, so if I could turn this into a question for staff. Mr. Hissick, do you have any comment on whether the funding for these three supplemental projects of approximately $40,000 comes from the land sale reserve for the dog park, or comes from the 60,000 saved from the other project?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think if it's council's intention to fund these in alternate non-tax ways, we don't need to sacrifice the dog park project. It should live on its own merits. It could be funded from one of several sources, whether it be amenity or a little bit of gas tax that we freed up, CCBF. So it's not necessary to kill one to let the others be funded from non-tax means. And I'm not particularly tied to that 60,000. That was an error in the
So, Councillor,
other than the fact that long-term projections, in the absence of future amenity contributions through development, we will be in the red after a few more years if no further money comes in.
Is there, just a general question, are there greater restrictions on using the land sale reserve than there is the general amenity?
I would say land sale is fairly open for any capital purpose. Amenity is maybe a little more restricted by our policy on, but even that, it's a fairly broad set of uses that it can be applied to.
Okay, Councillor Gannett, you had the floor. We turned it into a question. If you would like to make an amendment to change the funding source, I think that's in order.
Yeah, I'll move that the dog park be, for 40,000 be funded through the amenity reserve.
I'll second that.
Sorry, no, that's not an amendment. That's a motion arising.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry,
She can
Councillor
just-
Gannett has the floor. Councillor, go ahead.
Sorry, it might just be easier if Councillor Keefe does that as an amendment to her motion to state.
Well, sorry, the motion is on the floor now, so the council owns it. So if,
Yeah.
we're gonna take a vote on it, but if members wanna amend it, that's fine. And so it would be reasonable, so you're not wishing to change the funding for these 3 supplemental requests to general amenity. You're wanting general amenity to go to the dog park.
Sorry, perhaps we could just ask, if it's okay through you to staff,
May-
that our corporate officer could weigh in.
May,
Sorry, could you read
point-
back the
point-
motion, please?
Point of order, can I, am I able to withdraw?
No.
No,
My
it belongs
motion?
to council.
So we could vote on this motion and defeat it, perhaps, and then a subsequent motion could be to have these 3 items paid out of the amenity reserve, and we just don't do anything with the land sale reserve. We just leave the dog park funding where it is, and if Mr. Hisek, as he says, has no issue with us dipping into the amenity fund, then we fund those things out of the amenity fund.
Sorry, I have a question for Councillor Gannett. Do you have a preference on whether the dog park is funded from the land sale reserve or the general, or the amenity fund?
No, it's whatever Mr. Hisek says allows for. is
So
fine.
he said both are allowed, so you could make an amendment to the motion that's on the floor to have the dog park, to remove
The dog park.
the dog park being removed, and instead to have those supplemental requests funded from amenity.
I'll do that.
I'm not sure what you just did there.
What we did is, we're wanting to fund the 3 the 3 supplemental projects that were tax funded. Your motion has it being funded from the land sale reserve and removing the dog park. Councillor Gannett's motion is to not remove the dog park and to fund it from the amenity reserve.
But that,
Second.
oh, okay. Well, we're just, if it accomplishes
We're
the same
changing the
thing.
funding source
Second the amendment.
for the supplemental request. Okay. Yeah, we have it seconded by Councillor Gannett. Okay. Any further discussion? I think it's understood. All in favor? The motion carries. Thank you.
And now
Did you-
you vote on the,
And now we'll vote on the main motion. All in favor?
as amended, yeah.
As amended? All in favor? Thank you. So it's understood from that amendment and the main motion that those 3 supplemental projects totaling 38,000 will be funded from the amenity
Amenity
reserve,
reserve, yeah.
and the dog park remains untouched
Yeah.
in the budget. Councillor O'Keefe?
Yeah, that sounds good. And I don't have any other, capital projects to discuss at this time.
Thank you. Are there any others wish to discuss? I wish to discuss several parks capital projects. And I'm going to start with one, and during the motivation of that one, explain the rationale for removing one project from the 2026 budget, but talk about several parks projects in general. So my motion is to remove the dog park from the 2026 capital budget. Is there a seconder?
I'll second for discussion.
Thank you. My motivation stems around the number of park improvements that we're doing this year. We're doing in the budget is the Tallista Park picnic shelter replacement for $148,000, the Rathdown Park redevelopment of $550, the Breather Park $471, the Seaport Place stairwell $30,000, the Rest Haven Park pathway repaving is $60,000. The Glass Beach safety improvement $68,000, and then this project at $40,000. I haven't totaled all of those projects, but it's well in excess of $1.5 million. And I appreciate that we have the community has and several councils and several and staff over the years, over the past 25 years, have wanted to improve the amenities in all of our parks throughout the community, and we've made very significant improvements. But we know from the discussions we've had to date on the budget that we are very challenged in our capital reserves. We're challenged in the capital reserves this year, and we're going to be very challenged in the capital reserves. And there's two things. I'm going to put these into broad categories that we're using capital reserves for. We're using capital reserves for necessary projects. We're using them for hydrant upgrades, meter replacement program, pump stations, spare pump, access hatches, on and on in terms of the underground utilities and the roads, curbs, and that require replacement. And we're challenged in those reserves to fund those things. So those are the necessary things that our reserves have to fund. And we have a shortfall in reserves for doing that work. The other group that I'll broadly category is the nice to have. And they're the nice to have in terms of we've gone through a community engagement process for the active transportation plan. We've gone through a community engagement process for the Parks Master Plan. And there are they're very good, they're excellent projects in both of those plans that each span approximately 10 years to make our community a better place. And over the last 25 years, just to name some of the improvements, we have in Iroquois Park, we have a water spray park, we have a multi-sport park. In Tallista Park, we have a beach volleyball, we have a skateboard park. In Rathdown, we put in a new playground equipment just a few years ago that has a zip line. And then in the last year or two, we put in the significant all accessible playground equipment in Philip Breather Park. So we've been spreading these improvements around our parks for 25 years. My concern is that spending this level of funding on parks at this time is hampering our reserves. And so we understood from the last budget meeting that we had that particularly the larger projects, the Rathdown Park redevelopment and the Philip Breather redevelopment, which is 1.1 million or over 1.1 million, is coming from the Growing Communities Fund, and that the Growing Communities Fund will expire, that we need to use those funds, use it or lose it, so to speak, by March of 2027. And so in my request to staff, it was to ask if we could use those general community funds, with my concern over the level of nice-to-have projects, community amenity projects. And quite frankly, I haven't spoken to the active transportation ones. I'm just speaking to the parks one at the moment. I feel we're double burdening our reserves for necessary projects, and I would like to slow the pace, if you will. This is the fastest pace or the most we spent on park improvements in a year, and I feel it's come forward because we're trying to use up in a rush, if you will, the remaining growing community funds. So in my questions through to staff, I've asked if the growing community funds could be used for other capital projects, reserve-funded projects, such that it would protect the reserves in those projects, and we would simply slow the pace. Do we need to build a multi-sport court in Rathdown Park and Breather Park in the same year, along with all the other improvements that are happening in those parks? I'm going to turn the question while this motion is on the floor, I'm going to turn the question to Mr. Hissick. are there other, I know in the response to my questions, you made reference to tax-funded projects, but I knew there was already a limitation on that, and the intention is actually to protect our reserve funds for necessary projects in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there are definitely some reserve-funded capital projects which could qualify for a Growing Communities Fund funding. I would prefer not to try and identify those on the fly, but if it is council's direction that that change be made, I would propose that we report back when we bring the bylaw forward as to which three make the or which one project makes the most sense.
So, council, to come back to the motion on the floor with regards to the dog park. I appreciate it's been an amenity that's been requested by members of the public, but I think when we did the Parks Master Plan was completed by the 214 to 218 council in early 218, and then the 218 to 2022 council, the first council that 5 of us sat on, in March of 2019, following an extensive community engagement process that had happened in the fall of 2018, there were many priorities set for Resthaven Park, Rathdown Park, and Breathitt Park. They were identified as the 3 parks. And I've actually brought the pages for those parks, and the amenities for those parks probably totaled, I don't know, $5 million, $8 million, $10 million, and we understood that we would have to be doing those over a longer period of time. But I'm not wanting to speak about those 2 particular parks. It's just that there is 1.1 million just in those 2 parks alone, along with the 150,000 we're spending in Tallista Park and the other smaller projects that I mentioned. So that's my rationale for removing the fenced dog area, and I'll turn to others if they wish to speak. I'll turn to the seconder, Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I was initially okay to go ahead and, fund the dog park out of the amenity reserve. However, I think that the mayor brings up a good point about, we did have discussions at prior budget meetings in terms of turning our attention to things that were most critical, knowing that our reserves were getting low, that those had to be replenished, knowing that there's some pretty high priority things, projects that need to get done. And so using up the Growing Communities Fund, the Land Reserve Fund, amenity funds for nice to haves, I think is something that we have to revisit. And although it would be nice to say to go ahead and do the dog park, it is, I have to say, that I would definitely put that in the nice to have category. And so if it means that we pull that out for now, and that gives us room to fund something else either this year or maybe next year out of a similar reserve, I think that's a responsible approach to take. So I would support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councillor Novick, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't support this motion. The question of a dog park has been on council's agenda off and on for at least 4 years. It's been rejected a few times, and most recently we finally came up with a plan, a solution that appeared to please all, if not most, members of council. And it's something that is wanted by a substantial portion of the population. I don't see it as a nice to have. I don't see that nice to haves are a bad thing, even in a time of supposed fiscal restraint. It's the nice to haves that make Sydney the town that it is, and not just any other town in the province or even in the country for that matter. This $40,000 is less than 3% of the capital budget, sorry, less than 1/3 of a percent, less than 0.3% of the $13.6 million capital budget. I don't see why it is so important to take that out of the budget when it has taken so long for it to get in there. If somebody were to propose an alternate means of funding, either from the Growing Communities Fund or an amenities fund or something like that, then okay, no, not a problem. But removing it unilaterally and without any further thought to where it's going to come back into the budget, it means it has to go through a council process all over again. I just don't agree with that. We went through so much trouble to get it on the budget in the first place, and to remove it like this, I think it's a shame.
Thank you, Councillor Nova. Just to clarify one point, in terms of it having to go through another council process, it doesn't. It could just come forward as a capital project in a future year, but your points are taken. Councillor Garnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and I can attest that it's gone back to 2018 that the community has asked for this. I am a little confused as to why this motion is on the floor, given that we just had a motion to remove it and we decided to leave it in, so that's a little starting point for me for confusion. As far as this particular land sale reserve fund that it's to be coming out of it, that does not need to be replenished. It's not one of our reserve funds that we replenish. But I would also say, I don't view it as a nice to have either, in the sense that given the densification of downtown, given the Bill 44 requirements that we're going to see in the area with more densification, you don't have to walk around very much to see people coming out of just about every condo building with dogs. And I think it's beyond a nice to have. We need to have a place for people in the downtown core can take their dogs and exercise, socialize, whatever have you safely. So I don't support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Duff, please.
A question if I may through to staff. We recently put 3 items into the 60,000 we have there. There's still 20,000 left in that fund for that's developer funded now, the pathway.
Amenity.
Yeah. So is there a way to fund this differently than is currently funded?
Thank you, Councillor. Through the chair, I'm not sure it's the source of funding that's really at issue here. I think it's the existence of the project in general. It's already funded. We don't need to find new funding. It's what the mayor is suggesting is that by not including it at all this year, that perhaps we can free up the current funding source to use towards another capital project.
Thank you.
Do I have that right?
Another necessary capital project, yeah.
Yeah, with that note, I think I'll continue to oppose this. I think, as my colleagues have pointed out, that it's been now 7 years we've been discussing this, and we spent a lot of time and effort on this year to review with the residents as to the need and interest, and certainly picked the location. So I think it's a point of going ahead with what we already started, and maybe we just have to review the funding source as we move forward. But I think the idea of taking it out of the budget is one that I think we should not do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Toole, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I don't intend to support the motion. One of the other factors here which brought us back down this road again was complaint driven for individuals maybe utilizing sport courts to exercise their dogs. I concur with Councillor Garnett's observations that as we densify, particularly in the downtown core with more and more condos, providing this type of amenity in a community makes sense to me. So I don't intend to support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Toole, Councillor Duff, Councillor Duncan, Councillor Garnett, Councillor Novick, the motion is defeated. I didn't get off to a very good start with what my main point is in terms of necessary capital projects and nice to have. And so I'm going to turn to the $550,000 budget for the Rathdown Park development and the $471,000 budget for Philip Breather Park. And I've gone back to the park master plans that spoke to the community engagement and many of the amenities that the members of the public were interested in. And it was helpful in the Mr. Hissick staff report for this meeting that with regards to Rathdown Park and its $550,000 budget, that would include drainage improvements of $179,000, washrooms somewhere between $233,000 and $303,000, depending on the standard, a sport court for $140,000. The other thing that I want to draw attention to is for Rathdown Park, the other things that the community was interested in was improvements to the walkway, which is very narrow and impacted by the challenges to drainage. They were interested in picnic areas with seating, trash, and lighting, and they were interested in shading. I can't remember the exact term used, but shading elements, I think, was the reference to that. So some of those are smaller, and then, of course, the washroom and the sport court are quite large. For me, drainage has probably been the single largest issue for members of the public using that park, and I think that's the highest priority. I think also that the walkway, that narrow walkway, which so many people use every day, people would rank that high in terms of having that improvement made. So I'm gonna switch to Philip Breather Park for a moment, and we've already approved quite a significant project for the sidewalk to be along that stretch of ocean, which is, I think, important for facilitating the use of the park. But there's $258,000 in the budget for parking and sidewalk curb improvements for the roadway immediately adjacent to the frontage of the park on Ocean. And then there's a sport court for $222,000. A first question through to staff is, the sport court budgeted for Philip Breather is $222,000 and the sport court for Rathdown is $140,000. Can staff speak to what the rough differences might be between the two? In general, they're described as having, basketball and hockey and stuff. Yeah.
Good evening to the mayor. So the sport court for Rathdown would be smaller than the sport court for Philip Breather, just due to size and available size. So Rathdown would be approximately 2/3 the size of Breather.
Thank you. And a further question on Breather Park, is there any future drainage matters to be dealt with there? Staff have spent quite a lot on that, but is that basically done now?
To the mayor, that work was actually completed last year.
Thank you. So my concern is spending approximately $1.1 million and putting sport courts in both parks. We're already doing the sidewalk, but then doing the parking and sidewalk curb improvements for Philip Breather, but also doing a washroom drainage improvements. And my motion is to remove $250,000 from those two projects. Sorry, is to remove $300,000 from those two projects. And for staff to review those projects in terms of the priorities that came from the original plan, and that will help keep our reserve. That will make our reserves healthier for some of the necessary things that we need to do. But it is still, when you look at the total list of amenity improvements, including the dog park, that we'll be doing this year, it's quite significant. And I think if we went to members of the public and said we are trying to get a tax increase of 12.4% down, and yet you're considering building sport courts in 2 parks, a washroom in 1, and all of these other park improvements, that they would have some concern and would be accepting of spreading these improvements at quite frankly, the pace that we've been doing over the last several years, but sees itself accelerated in this because of trying to use the Growing Communities Fund. And I would ask that that $300,000 be applied to necessary reserve funded capital projects to be identified at the time of the bylaw brought forward. Is there a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to send it if I get a clarification on the motion.
The motion is to remove $300,000 in improvements to Rathdown Park and Philip Breather Park, and for those funds to be used for necessary reserve funded projects to be identified at the time of bylaw.
Second for discussion.
Thank you. I think I've motivated.
In general, I support this because I see utility versus wish list, and right now, certainly as a daily user of Rathdown, the utility of that park has lost 6 months of the year because of drainage issues. And as you've noted, the pathway is limited sometimes because of those flood conditions. That it actually closes the path for anybody to go across. So I would seek that those funds are directed to making the parks usable and more efficient, and that would be, in the case of Rathdown, certainly drainage. The sport court and the washrooms, yes, nice to have, but I think we can wait on those. So it'd be about the utility of the park that I would hope that be supported by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gurnett and Councillor O'Keefe.
Just to need some clarification. When you say 300,000, you've mentioned both parks, so I'm not sure specifically, is it 150 from each park, or what are we actually looking at?
Quite frankly, if you were to remove $222,000 from the sport court of Breather Park, given all the other improvements that are happening there, I think it can be pushed to a future year. But I would leave it to the discretion, given that both parks are to receive a number of improvements, both described in the staff report, but also in the park's master plan, that staff could work with the budget. So I'm not wishing to indicate one park or the other. I would suggest, the sport court from Breather Park, but I leave it at the discretion of staff. Would leave it at the discretion of staff.
Okay, then I'll speak to the motion. I think I would be in favor of not doing the washroom at Rathdown, but as far as the sport court at Breathour and the sport court at Rathdown, having lived in that area for 22 and a half years, it was an area that didn't get a lot. So I'm happy to see that we have a playground there. There are a lot of children in that neighborhood, a lot as there is in Rathdown. These are where our families live. And I think we've corrected a sort of shortcoming for years by putting in playgrounds in here. We want to draw families into our community. It's important for the viability of our community in the long term. When we're leaving out children 12 and up, they can't play on those playgrounds. We don't want them to. If they did, they'd probably damage them. The sport court provides an opportunity for children 12 and up to be able to have an opportunity to be part in the parks. So I'm concerned that if we take things like that out, we're leaving out a demographic of that we want families with those age groups to come in here. It's important for our community long term, and I know you've talked about the Growing Communities Fund as the funding source and putting it somewhere else, and to me this is where I saw that money being spent in areas like this to help our families in our community, to help these areas that have been underserved for amenities for so long, particularly areas where the majority of our families reside. So I won't support the motion as it put forward. Thank you.
Councillor Keefe? Councillor Keefe?
Yeah, I understand the rationale, but I don't support the motion in its current format for a few reasons. First of all, if I knew that we're going to take this money here and apply it to another project that I think is more critical, then I might consider that. But I don't know how the priority is going to be made. It's going to be left to staff. I would prefer us to say, if we're going to take a total of what I'm understanding is $600,000 total, 300 from each park? No, total of 300. Okay, so 150 per each park. So, what is that going to allow us to do? I'm still not sure. The other thing is that, in terms of, as Councillor Garnett said, and I agree, these two parks in particular have kind of get left out. This is where families are coming. There's getting to be, what I've started to see, more development in that area, more use for parks. And as Councillor Garnett said, that's what the Growing Communities Fund was for, to grow our communities, and we're trying to attract families. So I'm concerned about cutting out the sport court. I might consider cutting out the washroom is something that could wait, but I think the sport court. The other thing I want us to remember about Breather Park, and in regards to the parking, what you may, well, maybe you recall or you don't, but I recall. So when the accessibility committee was asked to comment on the plans for Breather Park, and one of the things they commented on was, after it was completed, although there was some accessible play structures in the park, it was difficult for them to access the park because the way that the parking area was graded and it was rough. And we told, and so they were kind of, that was a bit of the feedback we got back once the park opened. And what we said was, don't worry, it'll get done next year. And that was in the plan. So I'm nervous about just canceling things without having a better idea of what would be canceled. Because I would want us to say, we're gonna, cancel the washroom, but I think it's important to leave the sport courts, and I think it's important to make sure we do the parking lot properly at Breather Park. Thanks.
Thank you. If I may speak, oh, sorry, I'll let Councillor Rintoul speak for a first time, and I'll speak for a second time.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the observations by my colleagues with respect to the demographic that these parks obviously serve, but that some of these amenities may serve. But again, the motion is, I think, generic enough in the sense that it's going to give staff the capacity to take a look at which projects should be removed and that maybe don't offer the best value to park users. And I think that is, in my mind, an operational piece that we should entrust with staff. And I'll support the motion in particular because it doesn't define which elements of these two parks should be removed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And so while Councillor Garnett did kind of ask me a question to clarify, I'm not specific on the improvements. The washrooms, are 300,000, could be as much as 300,000, and that could be the single one. I think the priorities need to be revisited. In terms of knowing what essential projects or necessary projects this will be spent, we're using about $11 million of infrastructure reserve, of reserves this year, and over $5 million alone in the infrastructure reserve. And in the infrastructure reserve is where many of the necessary utilities are placed. And so in this motion is intended for staff to identify necessary capital projects that we have to replace this pump, or we have to replace that section of roadway. It's not the discretionary ones. I'm going to change from nice to have to discretionary. It's discretionary whether or not we put a washroom in Westdown Park. It's not discretionary whether we replace a pump in a particular location. So just for clarity there. And quite frankly, I think given the state of our reserves, I was looking at $500,000, and given all the improvements that we've made recently to these parks, and that there will still be significant improvements to both of these parks this year, I just think we're going to be having greater challenges beyond this year with necessary work in our reserves. Seeing no further discussion, I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Gurnett is opposed, Councillor O'Keefe and Councillor Novick, the motion carries. I don't have anything further on capital. I'll turn one more time to colleagues if there's any other capital project discussion. Seeing none, I'll turn back to Mr. Hisik, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moving on to the last component, or rather large component of our budget, is the general operating budget, which we reduced very slightly on March 3rd. The amended list of supplementals I will be displaying for you momentarily, and we have had 2 additional changes to that already from earlier deliberations, 2 slight reductions funded from reserve. And there are 2 additional recommendations in the staff report impacting the operating budget. I believe the capital component of one of those has already been dealt with, and we should finish that up with a corresponding resolution on the operating side. Perhaps once we deal with the 2 staff recommendations, we'll give council a chance to reconsider additional changes, and we could look again at the supplemental list should council wish to do so.
Mr. Hisik, if I might interrupt for just a moment, are you able to tell us where the tax increase is at this stage, at this juncture?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor, we are sitting at 11.18% with an additional no, we haven't considered the operating one, so it's 11.18. We have reduced by a total of about 95,000 so far this meeting.
Sorry, we made a motion to reduce the contributions. Oh, sorry, that's coming up. Okay, so maybe I'll ask the question again after those 2 motions. Thank you. Please continue.
If you'd like me to project with the...
No, that's all. Please continue. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do
All right.
appreciate now those motions were coming.
So this was the updated one-time supplemental list. 2 additional projects have been internally funded and will come off this list. So we are, well, actually 3, including the debt payments for the Public Works Admin Building. This is the ongoing supplemental list. We have not made any further changes today to this list. And here are the 2 from the staff report that I was referring to. One relates to the infrastructure reserve contribution for this year, and the other to the short-term debt servicing for the Public Works office module that was removed from the capital plan.
Do colleagues have any questions, or would a member, Councillor Rintoul, please?
Thank you. Mr. Hisik, would you scroll back to supplemental requests one time, 2026? Thank you. I'll move that funding for the Sydney Sparkles Parade after party be denied.
Second.
I'll turn to the movers, please.
Yeah, thank you. I recognize it's a small amount, $5,000, and I certainly appreciate the work that Peninsula Celebrations does throughout our communities. The presenter, I believe it was just last week, who came forward to speak about this. You know, I think it would be a fun event. My takeaway from that was that, you know, they would only draw on this $5,000 as needed. I think for us in budgeting, that becomes a little bit of a challenge, in that we're committing this money, you know, to that purpose. This is a direct tax impact, small amount. You know, I'm fairly confident in a community that's as supportive as ours is, that they'll continue to be successful, looking at sponsorship opportunities to build on the success of the parade itself. And so, you know, with all due appreciation and respect to Peninsula Celebrations, I feel like, you know, this just is a really challenging budget for us, and every $5,000 helps the town in this case. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor O'Keefe, please.
Thank you. Similarly, I think this is a great idea. I think it would be really fun. However, I don't think this item belongs here in our budget discussions. To me, it's more of a grant and aid sort of thing. But more importantly, I think this is something, we already provide the SBIA, the Sydney Business Improvement Area, with for just over almost $43,000 specifically for event liaison and event supplement from the town. So in the past, they've used that to fund and support certain events like the Comic-Con that took place, the Lego Family Day, Skateboard Festival. And so I think there's funding available elsewhere that this group could access. And so I would encourage them to try that, or as Councillor Rintoul said, sponsorship, etc. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you.
No.
Sorry, Councillor Garnett, you're opposed? Thank you. Sorry, I'm trying to watch online on two sides of council at the same time. Councillor Rintoul, did you have a wish to continue?
No, thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the screen with two motions recommended from the staff report. I'll turn to colleagues if someone would like to move it. I'll move that the contribution to the surface works portion of the infrastructure reserve be reduced by $290,000 for 2026.
Second for discussion.
Thank you. We have, I'm sorry, I don't know the total. I believe it's around 700,000 or 800,000. Mr. Hissig may correct me in terms of what we've reduced reserve projects from the infrastructure reserve and one or two other reserves. So we're keeping the reserves healthier. We're not, we're removing this motion is to renew, to not tax $290,000 for reserve contributions. I'm sorry, I had it in front of me, but we are doing reserve contributions of over $2 million, of almost $2.5 million. So this reduces it by nearly $300,000, and this would be a significant measure in terms of reducing the tax impact from somewhere over 11% to below 10% or 9%. I'll turn to the seconder.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, as a council, we directed staff to look for things like this. So, you know, this is what they've come back with. They've gone through everything and found that this is a way that can be manageable. I'm not a supporter normally of dropping reserves because I like them to be healthy, but if staff is confident that this number is a number that can work for them moving forward, then I will support them in that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan is opposed. The motion carries. I'll move that the short-term debt servicing for the purchase of a pre-manufactured office module for Public Works be deferred to begin in 2027.
Second.
Second, thank you. Just a question of clarification through the staff. I think I asked this in my question, Mr. Hissig, but the debt servicing from this is not of consequence. The cost for debt servicing this 450 or approximately 450,000 project is not a consequence of this motion?
The capital portion has already been deferred by a year, I believe, so this is just keeping up with that on the operating side.
No, but if we had spent the 400, and I'm sorry, the number's close by here, but it's about 450,000.
450, yeah.
Yeah, 450,000. Is that if we had started that in 2026, we would have incurred approximately 30,000 plus in debt servicing costs, which would have been tax funded.
That's correct. Correct.
Okay, thank you. And so I think the rationale provided in the staff report, given the timing of the consulting work to be done, that there's a rationale for this to begin to be deferred and begin in 2027. I'll leave my comments there. Turn to the seconder. Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Hisik, could you
Yes.
perhaps have a new number for us?
An update based on the changes to date, the 2026 tax impact has been reduced to 9.37%. And next year's projection has been increased to 9.27.
Councillor Gurnett.
I have a motion that I believe is now, I talked to Mr. Hisik earlier, time to move it. Okay.
Please.
So I'll move that the transfer to the general capital reserve for 2026 of $150,000 be removed.
Second?
I'll turn to the movers.
Yeah, thank you. This is, if anybody probably want to follow, go to page 76, because it's a bit of a financial journey. So you'll need to look at the numbers to follow me. Page 76 of the binder. And it's helpful for the rationale if you can actually look at the pages. Yep, that's the one, yeah. So if you'll notice on the numbers are slightly different what was given tonight, but based on the binder, you'll notice that the 2026 would have ended with 180,000. So if we take the 150 out, you end with a balance of 30,746. And if this motion passes, what I will do is make two separate motions to remove or to defer the small packer garbage truck for 100,000 and the Lockside slope maintenance equipment for 70,000 to 2028, where you'll see there's nothing currently listed. So that would and with 150 for next year would leave a balance at the end of 2027 of 134,746, and then moving to 2028 when you have the 170 taken out with the 150 in, you leave a balance of 114,746. And the reason I thought this might be something that we could approach is that if you look in 2029, we have $350,000 of capital towards town hall. And if you go back to 2028, there's a one-time supplemental for exterior painting, which is 50,000. So we've just initiated a town hall discussion in the community. And this is based on engineering reports that spoke to the building condition assessment, speaking to it requiring extensive renovations. So my thinking is, looking out to that far, would we need that $350,000? Where are we in the process of moving ahead with the town hall, wherever that may be, or whether we do renovations or whatever approach we take? I'm thinking in that terms of 2029, we're probably looking at some kind of short-term or long-term borrowing, as opposed to having to take money out of this reserve fund to fund these, which will be quite an expensive amount of things that have to be done at that point. So at this point, that's kind of my rationale for why I think we can do it at this point. But before we have a discussion about it, and I spoke to Mr. Hisik earlier, it might be good if he weighed in on the implications for what this would be in terms of future budgets.
Thank you. To the seconder, please.
Yeah, I looked through these myself, and I think it's just prudent expense management relative to the timing on it. So some way I think we're pushing this down the road, and in fact we are by a couple of years, but I think the rationale as Councillor Garnett gave to it is prudent to look at these expenses and do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Sorry? Mr. Hisik?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If you'll recall, we eliminated this contribution last year, and reinstating it for this year added roughly 1% to the tax impact. So if we're doing that again, just means we're removing 1% this year, adding it to next year. Whenever we reinstate it, that amount will be an impact. So really, I'm not saying don't do it, it's just an emerging pattern. We're reducing today and adding impacts tomorrow in one way or another. And maybe this general capital reserve is not needed for those town hall projects in future. Maybe it's needed for something else, because we know there's always something else that council will want to use reserve funding for to reduce the tax impact. So for us to build up a little bit of a balance there is not the worst idea.
Councillor Gannett, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and through you to staff. I'll wait for you there. So I think it might be helpful in terms of the discussion if you could indicate what impact that would have on to where the budget would land this year, and what it would do to the impact to the budget next year. I think that's an important consideration.
It would reduce this year's impact to 8.45 and increase next year's to 10.19, or potentially the following years by roughly a percentage.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Keefe?
Thank you. I'm leaning towards not supporting this just because I'm not really sure that we accomplish a whole lot. Putting these things off for another year, prices for these go up. I would be more interested in like looking at how necessary, you know, these things are, but I'm failing to see the advantage of taking off 1% in 1 year only to add it the next year. So I am inclined to not support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other speakers, I'll speak, and I won't support this. I have a concern. I appreciate the intent, but I have a concern. Well, I would like to see the tax impact lower this year. We're only setting it even higher as a starting point next year than we're at right now for this year. So I'll leave my comments there. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan, myself, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Novick, and Councillor Rintoul. The motion is defeated.
If I may continue, Mr. Mayor. So the last component we're looking at is general operating beyond the supplemental items. And one might wonder why we don't really focus on general operating costs as a potential tax reduction. And the primary reason is that, as I keep hammering home several times every budget season, we use an amount of surplus to kind of acknowledge that we will generate some savings within the operating budget every year. And by using surplus to balance our budget, we're not overtaxing. If we start nickel and diming against the operating budget, I would no longer be comfortable using surplus to balance it, because I know we won't generate those savings. So that's why I don't really focus on this. If we were to move to a budgeting process where we fully tax for all our services, then okay, fair game. But while we keep using a large allocation of surplus, knowing that we're going to generate some savings, I think this is an extremely false economy, and we shouldn't focus on it. Really, we've gone through the likely suspects, supplementals, tax-funded capital. We've run out of mitigation measures. So the only thing left is to look at potentially reducing services. And if that's something we want to look at, I would recommend not doing it on the fly. I think staff should be directed to do that over the course of the next year or several years, because it can be a very large process. And it won't be without cost, it won't be without productivity losses, but if council feels strongly about it, then we could be directed to report back on that process for later this year. If there are no further questions or resolutions on operating, then at that point it would be appropriate to make a motion about approving the general operating budget and then the general capital as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Hissick. It was, before we get to approve the the general operating as amended, I think we should bring forward the reconsideration of the council remuneration rate review, because it is in the 5-year plan, and we are looking next to approve the 5-year plan. So reconsideration of that motion could impact the 5-year plan. It doesn't impact it in 26, but impacts the overall 5-year plan. And so I will turn to that item now, which has been provided to us. And I'm going to begin. The 6 members of council that are in the chamber at the table tonight had an extensive discussion with regards to council remuneration. It was Councillor Rintoul who was not in attendance at that meeting. Councillor Rintoul was at a subsequent meeting where the vote was taken to bring reconsideration forward to this meeting. I do want to note that I do respect the 2 council members who voted against the agenda, in that this was coming forward this evening. And so I would, given that it was only Councillor Rintoul that was not in the full discussion from all members of council, Councillor Rintoul, are you comfortable discussing this item tonight, or we can refer it to the council meeting next Monday night, and it won't impact the budget. It will still take its effect on the budget in 2027, but it doesn't affect us approving the budgets this evening.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm comfortable having the discussion, but as a clarification, you introduced this as reconsideration on council remuneration, but I recall the tie vote on that occasion related to spreading the mayor's salary over 4 years. So is that specifically what you're referring to?
Yeah, the motion, the specific motion that will come forward. I'm just referring. The topic is just council remuneration.
Yeah. Yes. No. I'm happy to speak to the matter that's on the agenda.
Okay. Thank you. So the motion that is on the floor, by virtue of calling reconsideration, the motion is on the floor. It doesn't require a mover or a seconder. Is that the mayor's remuneration be allocated over 4 years, and I will seek an amendment after speaking to staff, and that is. And that the mayor's salary being made whole in year 4. And with the motion on the floor, I'll speak to that. And so what happens is, if the mayor's increase is spread over 4 years, by a simple division of 4, then what would happen is the normal cost of living increase wouldn't happen in year 4. And so what staff can do by that amendment of the councillor or the mayor's salary being made whole in year 4, is adjustments would be made along the way such that the mayor's salary would be in year 4 what it would have been if we didn't do this motion. So it's a bit of math housekeeping, if you will. Councillor Novak?
So just a question, if I may, through yourself. Is the intent that the salary that had been the result of the process or the policy work that we had done, the difference between the salary in 2026 and the salary that would have been approved would be divided by 4, and that amount would be added to the mayor's salary.
It would, the mayor's,
year?
sorry, just to clarify, the increase in the mayor's salary, and I'm sorry I don't have the exact number, I can't tell you it's a 28% increase, but it would be divided by, it would take place in 4 increments over the 4 years. So there would be an increment in 2027, then another increment in 2028, 29, and the final increment in 30. Okay. And what it would be in 2030 is as if we didn't pass this motion and the increase.
Okay. And so there would be no CPI adjustments
Yes.
in each
Yes.
of the...
Yes, there would.
Yes, there would be.
Mm-hmm.
So then, I don't understand if the mayor's salary at the end of year 4 would be as it would be in year 1.
No, it would be in year 1 if we didn't make this motion. If
Yes.
the increase was to take effect immediately
Yes.
versus being spread over 4 years.
But then wouldn't the CPI impact that?
No, that's what staff have advised, that the calculation including CPI can be made such that either the mayor's salary rises the full 28% beginning January 1st of 2027, or the increase is spread over 4 years. And what it would be in year 4 is the same as if it took effect on January 1st and there were the cost of living increases in each of the 4 years.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. So there would be CPI indexes.
Mhm.
Okay, all right, that's clear.
Okay,
Thank
so we're at questions. I haven't motivated yet, but go ahead, Councillor Gurnett.
Thank you, Mayor, and this is a question through you to staff. So the motion is that the mayor's remuneration be allocated over 4 years. The policy states that the annual remuneration rate for each councillor was set at 43 as the established rate for the mayor's position. So in effect, are we not also making the councillor's rate spread over 4 years to align with the policy?
Mr. Hiss?
Through the chair, the policy will have to be amended based on council's intention. Clearly, it can't live on in its current format if we're making this drastic change. Doing the projections, if we were to do the mayor's increment over 4 years and the councillor's increment immediately, the councillors would be at 51% of the mayor's salary in year 1 and would gradually decrease until year 4 where we hit that 43%.
So you would have to word the policy to, because it's worded now, it doesn't work, right? That's all I'm clarifying.
Clearly not.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dutt?
That was my same question, so I just want clarification on the motion. Is the motion specific to the mayor's salary and not defining the policy is effective on the councillors' salaries in subsequent years?
So I've just made the motion. Councillor Gurnett has asked for clarification on whether it impacts the councillor salary. As I'm understanding, staff's answer is no, it does not impact the councillor's salary. Mr. Hissick, I'm turning back to you.
Thank you. My understanding of the intent here is to allocate the mayor's increment only over 4 years. So far, there has been no council resolution to do the same for council members. So that's why the policy as written will not work. If it's the intention for it to apply to all 7 members of council, then we need an additional clarifying motion.
Point of order.
Councillor Rintoul?
If I may, Mayor, we're now speaking to items that are not in the motion. You've called reconsideration on a specific motion where there was a tie vote. It related to the mayor's salary over 4 years. That's all this pertains to.
Well, thank you, Councillor Rintoul, but I'm not, I understand your point of order, but the question is from Councillors Garnett and Duck are reasonable in terms of given the policy that the councillor's salary will be a percentage of the mayor's salary. The question was, if you change the mayor's salary, does it change the councillor's salary? And we're still seeking clarification from Mr. I'm still seeking clarification from Mr. Hissick on that. To say that the
Fair,
policy...
but he's told us the policy has to be revised, is what he's told us.
But the policy has to be revised, but what does this motion do and how does the policy have to be revised?
What this motion does is it spreads the mayor's salary over 4 years, and if we were to go with the existing policy, then that would automatically decrease the councillor's pay accordingly. But my understanding from when this was initially raised was it applied only to the mayor. So that's why some change has to be made to bring it into alignment. Either we keep the policy as is and it applies to all 7 elected officials, or we amend the policy so that the mayor's increment is gradual while the councillor's increment is immediate.
Okay, so so this is my understanding of what you said, Mr. Hissick, and you'll have perhaps have to clarify, Ken. If this motion were to pass, councillor salaries would be reduced by the same percentage as the mayor's salary. And then we would have,
Point of
no,
order.
I'm not accepting a point of order because I'm
it's not-
asking a question of
It's not
the staff.
reduced.
Because but then the policy would have to be changed so that councillor salaries did not change just because the mayor's salary was changed. The timing of the mayor's increment was changed. We have to have a decision on whether this motion passes, how the policy has to be changed. And I'm understanding that this motion, from what you said, is passing this motion does spread the councillor salary increases over 4 years as well. And if council wishes to change that, they would have to do so by amending the policy.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm in a very difficult position here in terms of trying to deal with what I know what the original intent was back when it was first considered, and then now navigating this policy piece. So it's
Okay,
open
so
to interpretation, I would say.
If it's open to interpretation, then I'm going to speak to the intent of my motion is only to affect the mayor's increase being spread over 4 years. So, in my speaking list, I'm just going to a new speaking list now. Councillor Duck?
I'm wondering if I
So
might
that-
propose an amendment to the motion that says, the second part would be, and that council salaries, no? Okay. All right.
So, if council is understanding of my intent in the motion, given that it's subject to interpretation, is this motion only impacts the 28% increase in the mayor's salary being spread over 4 years. Councillor Novick, then Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you, Mayor. Question to the mover in terms of the intent of your wording, and that is the intent that any time the mayor's salary is adjusted pursuant to the policy,
No.
that it be split, or only for the first time?
It's only this.
Only
it
this
is only this
particular time.
It's only this particular increase. It doesn't speak to the policy being implemented in future.
Okay.
Councillor Keefe?
Are we asking questions now or motivating?
The question's on the floor, so you can do either.
Okay. What I'm having difficulty with is that although it's your intention to just have it apply to the mayor's salary, the fact of the matter is that the policy states something else. And so it seems to me that if your salary is, if the mayor's salary is a certain amount.
Sorry, Councillor, I made a decision on the interpretation of it. And so one of the things is when the mayor makes a decision such as that, is that a council member, if they're in disagreement with it, can challenge the chair, and it can be reversed. Ms. Nelson, please.
Just listening to the conversation, right now we have, council has approved the councillor's salary as the new rate, right? Council can make now a decision on the mayor's remuneration right now. And based on those two things, the policy would need to be amended to reflect those two things. So not necessarily have 43% of the mayor's salary. We can change that on however council wishes.
Councillor, sorry, so just to speaking to Ms. Nelson's point, if you turn to the minutes of the previous meeting, one of the motions that passed is the annual remuneration for each councillor to be set at $30,936 effective January 1st, 2027. So that's in effect. This motion, as I've interpreted it, that's on the floor, would only impact the mayor's salary, but as Mr. Hissick has indicated and Ms. Nelson has now confirmed, we would have to change the policy to align with those two decisions. Councillor Keefe, you had the floor. And sorry, I'm just going to be completely transparent here. While I made the motion to have the mayor's salary spread over the increase of the mayor's salary spread over 4 years, I did not make the same motion with regards to council. So if there's a council member who wants to pursue that after we've gone through this motion, that's at your discretion. I'm not moving that motion.
I'm just wanting clarification from Ms. Nelson perhaps. So she's stating that our salary, or the council member's salary has already been set as of January 1st, 2027, at a specific amount.
That's the motion I read out, Councillor, from the previous
Okay.
meeting.
And did we also have a specific amount for the mayor's salary?
Yes,
That would be in effect.
yes.
So I guess what I'm wondering is if we already made that motion, that is the amount that would be in effect at that date.
Sorry, Councillor,
Whether
I'm
we
going
even
to,
have the option.
we do. In reconsideration is in order. We brought this up at the meeting where it was referred to this meeting. So reconsideration of the motion with regards to spreading. The motion passed to increase the mayor's salary to 61,872, a 28% increase effective January 1st, 27. And then I made a motion to spread that increase over 4 years.
Okay.
And the motion was defeated in a tied vote, and that's when I have used referral and reconsideration to have it on the floor this evening.
Okay, so I'm in support of the mayor's salary being implemented over 4 years. And I would also, if we're going to do that, I think that council I would be supportive of doing the same for
Okay,
council members.
that would be a motion arise, or
Okay.
another motion arising, Councillor,
Okay.
is not germane to this motion that's on the
Okay.
floor, as we've tried to clarify. Councillor O'Toole, please. Or sorry,
Thank you.
I have
I'll speak to
Councillor-
the motion.
I have
and
Councillor Duck and
the
then
motion
Councillor,
is
go ahead.
specific.
Councillor O'Toole?
I'll speak to the motion, and it's specific to this motion, in which, as the mayor noted, there was a tie vote at a meeting. I wasn't there to cast my vote, and so I will indicate that I am in support of spreading the mayor's salary increase over 4 years. I'm in support of this motion. I'm in support of it because we don't know who the mayor will be in 2027. But what we do know is that this mayor is comfortable with that suggestion. And we also understand that will lead to a minor policy revision to reflect this in the policy moving forward. I'll leave my comments there.
Thank you. Councillor Duck?
I concur with Councillor O'Toole. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Thank you. I think you have a legacy hand, Councillor O'Toole. Any further discussion? Councillor Novak, please.
Thank you, Mayor. As in the initial vote, I do not agree with this motion. I believe that we went through a process to determine salaries. We determined a method for determining the salary of the mayor and council. Staff came back with a report based on that policy. The work that was done at that time gave us the numbers that we've been talking about. I think they're reasonable given the policy. The policy was designed to put us in the middle of a group of 8 similar municipalities. All the criteria were met. The numbers were generated. I think they're reasonable. I don't think that there is validity in having a different set of circumstances for the mayor as compared to the councillors. I think if the policy was originally drawn up to suggest that any wage increases be allocated evenly over the 4-year council period, that's a different story. I'm not quite sure of the motivation for this particular motion. However, it's certainly not something that one sees generally in the application of wages to elected officials. They're typically the policy is engaged, the numbers are produced, they're approved by council, and they're put into effect. I'm not sure what the motivation is to see this allocated over 4 years. I don't agree with it, since it's not the same process that is being used for council. And I don't see a tremendous benefit to the community for doing this. Yeah, there might be a small difference in the annual outlay, but as the mayor stated when I posed the question, the intent is only for this time, not for each time that the wages of council and mayor are reconsidered. And so if it's not to be an ongoing policy that the mayor's salary be adjusted in 4 equal increments every time there's an increase, why are we doing it now? What's the point? What's the benefit, other than, as I said, a very small kick to the budget? It seems incongruous. It's not how I would expect a policy to be implemented for the benefit of the community. I'll leave my comments there, but I will vote against this.
Thank you, Councillor. So you've inquired in terms of my motivation. I did speak at length on my motivation at the original meeting, and I'll now repeat myself in terms of that. This results in a 28% increase. This is my 8th year in serving as mayor. I've received a cost of living increase. I made the decision to run in 2018, knowing what the salary was, and knowing that there was a cost of living increase each year. And I chose to run again in 2022, knowing what the salary was, and continuing to get a cost of living increase in each of the 4 years this year. I don't know, I don't perceive anything has changed significantly in my responsibilities to warrant a 28% increase as a lump sum. And quite frankly, we have spent a lot of time, approximately 6 hours or 5 hours at the last meeting and this meeting, on a tax increase from 12.4% to somewhere around 9.3%. It is being sensitive to what the public considers when councils are making decisions on municipal matters, and taking a 28% increase, for me personally, doesn't reflect an appreciation of the concern that the general public has for even a 9.3% increase, and then going ahead and giving a 28% increase. So that's my motivation. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I didn't get to much of the motivation previously. So one point I did want to make was that I understand colleagues' rationale in terms of this was something that was overdue. Let's just get to it. A desire to catch up and be where we should have been years ago. However, the reason I prefer the 4-year phase-in period for the mayor, and is that the people responsible for this gap, for this being overdue, was us. When I say us, I mean council and the council before us. And so we had opportunity to address this for years and years and years, and we chose not to. And so now it came to the point that we had to get caught up, and we're going to give ourselves or just speaking to the mayor, these huge increases. And I just find that morally myself, that something that we created this situation, and now we were asking taxpayers to suddenly pay for what we should have addressed in the past. And I have difficulty with that. And also, as I'll just reiterate what the mayor said, in regards to, we're going through this budget process, and we have difficulty with a 12% increase for the public, but that we're okay with such a big increase all at once for the mayor's salary, that we're okay with that. So I find that really problematic and difficult to justify.
I'll turn to Councillor Gurnett next, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, we have to stop using the term ourselves, because this is not an increase for this council. I think that is leading to confusion in the public, which is causing some backlash, which would not have happened if we have not made comments like that. This is for the next council. This is January 1st, 2027. It's the very first line in the post that our communications manager put on the Facebook page, and still people are talking about us giving ourselves raises. Not true. That's the starting point. Is it the council's fault before that they didn't push it? Yes, the council in 2018-22 did push it. And it was going to move forward, but this little thing called a pandemic happened. And so it got pushed to the burner. It didn't get put in the strat plan. It was something that was supposed to be addressed and was not, but it was pushed by a member of council and backed by another. So that's not exactly a factual statement. I think those are two things you got to start right from the start. If the mayor knows his role better than anybody and what his responsibilities are. So if he's comfortable that this is where he thinks the remuneration should be for the incoming mayor based on roles and responsibilities, then I can support that. And that is the motion we're on the table speaking to at this point in time. So I won't address any other aspect of what council's going to get, because that's not before us. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just speak one point of clarification. Two things. One is in terms of members of the public misconstruing whether this is a council giving themselves an increase. Me tracking this over the last 8 years, every other municipality, even when they are doing the increases for the next year, they're still accused of giving themselves. So it's not unique to what's occurred in Sydney. That's been, the public has taken that view. And when speaking members of the public, what they've said to me is, they said, is it your intention to run next term? Yes. Well, you're voting for it. Whether or not you're elected or not, you're still intending to run, and they perceive that as wanting to give yourself an increase. It's not an increase for this council. I accept that, but that confusion or that perception is pervasive in other municipalities. The other thing I'll speak to is the mayor's role as I've conducted myself is not a full-time position. I would not be able to take on the chair's role at the CRD, or even just be a CRD director as I was for 6 years. And the remuneration is somewhere between $30,000 and $40,000, depending on what roles you take at the CRD. And that sort of thing. So yeah, I'm reflecting on what the roles and responsibilities are here, and the fact that it is not a full-time position here, and that allows me to serve as a director of the CRD, and in fact to serve as I'm doing in my second year as chair of the CRD. And there is a significant increment for the chair of the CRD from a director, given similar responsibilities working with the CAO and other elected representatives. Those will be my final comments this evening. I'll turn to any others and then look to call the question. I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Novick is opposed. The motion carries. Thank you.
Point of order?
Yes.
If it would be amenable at this point, before moving to number 2 on this list, I would like to make another amendment to the policy.
Sorry, so thank you, Councillor Gunnar. If I can speak, and then if you're wishing to do something different, I'll certainly listen. Councillor, with that in place is that we have policy number FN 02025, council remuneration review, and the recommendation is that the policy be approved as amended. We haven't done that yet, so if council is wishing to change the policy, now would be the time. I'll turn back to you, Councillor Gannett.
Thank you, Mayor. It's speaking to items that are in the red on the policy in the paper, and I would move that the benefit plans portion be removed from the council remuneration policy.
I'll second for discussion. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of this being part of the remuneration package. I think we have our exempt staff have a compensation package that has that in there. Our unionized staff have it as part of their negotiated contracts. When looking when hearing the discussion around this whole policy and hearing members of council speak to saving costs for taxpayers, and if you go back into the Statement of Financial Information, or SOFI, from 2023, we had 4 of the 7 councillors who were participating at a cost of just shy of 7,000. 2024 was just over 8,000. I'm assuming 2025 will be more because insurance costs continue to go up. This is a way we can lessen the impact to taxpayers. And I you know, from my perspective, I don't think it's a benefit that we should be a part of. I think it should be for town employees. And you know, if in fact we are trying to find a way to save money for taxpayers to offset these increases that were long overdue, this is a capacity to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I won't motivate it this time. Councillor Keefe?
Thank you. Just a question through you to staff. For the benefits that are available to council members, my recollection is that I think there's a Blue Cross plan that that is paid for by the council member. Can you elaborate a bit more on how much is paid by the individual and how much is paid by the town?
Thank you, Councillor. Honestly, I'm not really prepared for this detail of.
Okay.
Council benefits are a nominal amount, but it is a gesture. So generally benefits are 80-20, with the town paying 80 and the councillor paying 20, but that might not apply to every benefit that council is entitled to, and I would have to report back on that.
Yeah, because I think as someone who is is using one of those programs, it is not in the, I think we should be looking at accurate information, and it's not I personally don't receive $7,000 worth of benefits, so I'm not sure where.
Point of clarification,
Okay,
those are the numbers for all 4 councillors combined.
Oh.
It's right out of the SOFI document.
Okay,
Point of privilege.
sorry, I thought,
That's fine.
sorry, thanks for the clarification. Just to motivate further, it's a nominal amount, and as colleagues have said, this is not about voting for us. This is about future colleagues, and if it's something that will attract, you know, the council has talked about wanting to attract younger people to council, and I think that's something that would be a benefit of that for them. So thinking about those people that may come to council in the future, I think we have to put as many sort of attractions out there as possible to attract people to want to come and serve on council. So I think it's a justifiable benefit to continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rintoul, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I would have anticipated that this is more a benefit to not a younger person, but someone on the opposite spectrum who maybe doesn't have benefits through their employment. But that really wasn't the point that I was going to raise. As Councillor Garrett noted, some councillors partake in this, others do not. You know, some have it through their post-employment opportunities, or like myself, through their employment, and don't take them through the town. But I guess my point mainly would be, I don't recall this being a comparative to any great extent that was researched. So when staff undertook a comparison of you know, council stipends and other municipalities, I don't believe this was one of those comparatives. And if it was, I don't have that information at my fingertips, I think, to be able to vote on this. So it probably should be going forward, looking at the full picture. But in terms of supporting, you know, this motion to amend the policy to, as I understood it, essentially remove this piece, I wouldn't be supportive at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Novick.
Thank you, Mayor. I won't support the motion. I think this too is one of those things, as Councillor O'Keefe mentioned, that helps to motivate people to look at this as a viable career move. Not everybody who does have a job in the private sector has access to benefits. And so councillors who come into this role without that benefit would find that, you know, that this makes their lives a little bit more reasonable and puts them on par with other people who do have these benefits. It is an option, and if people do have them from their existing employment, then they don't have to take them with the municipality. But for those that don't have them or don't have access to them, I think it's a reasonable and not unusual part of the remuneration package. So I won't vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hisik, are you able to comment on were comparators done? Is this a common aspect of council remuneration in the region, at least?
It is a growing trend to make council members eligible for these types of benefits. They weren't part of our recent survey, but we take part in the surveys of others, and this frequently does come up. So it's not uncommon, and I think it's more and more prevalent.
Thank you. So the motion is to remove. Is there any further discussion? I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duck, Councillor Duncan, myself, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Novick, and Councillor Rentoul. The motion is defeated.
Mayor?
Sorry, I'm turning to Councillor O'Keefe. I just saw her first.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was gonna move that the pay increase for councillors be implemented along with the mayor's increase over 4 years.
Sorry, say that again, with your microphone, please.
Sorry, that the pay increase for councillors be implemented along with the mayor's increase over 4 years.
Okay, I don't think reference needs to be made to the mayors. This is,
Okay.
This motion is,
All right,
as
so
I'm
that-
understanding it is.
Sure. That the pay increase for councillors be implemented over 4 years.
Second?
We have it moved and seconded. I'll turn to the movers.
A few things, I guess, consistency, and I think it makes it complicated and difficult if the mayor's is going over 4 years and ours isn't. I can see a lot of complications. And I still think in terms of, as I said before, the increase, and we can say that it wasn't our fault, but it doesn't matter really how we got to this point about, it would have been nice that we did it, and there's lots of good reasons, COVID, and I recognize that. So whatever the reason is, it happened. And so now that there is such a significant increase, I think it's reasonable for taxpayers who are going to be paying that to have that absorbed over a 4-year period. So that's it. Thanks.
And just for clarification, I think it's understood by members of council, while the increase was 28% for mayors, it was 38% for council members. I'll turn to Councillor Duncan, then Councillor Rentoul, please, then Councillor Novick and Councillor Duck.
No, I concurred with Councillor O'Keefe's rationale. The only thing I would add is that the same rationale about the change in councillor duties as mayor's duties applies to councillors. There's, you can serve on additional committees with the CRD and get paid extra. You can, we don't have actually more meetings. Part of what this council did when we came in, it was actually the last council. The last council was review the liaison meetings and the committee meetings the council was on and see how many were actually necessary. So we've looked at it from both angles, both the number of duties that are necessary for a council person to do that takes them away from their other paid employment and thus conflicts with actually this, not being a full-time job. And looked at this as bringing this up to parity to make sure that it's similar to those other councils in the region. As many people have pointed out, you don't have to live in a municipality in order to serve in that municipality. And the idea that there is actually potentially competition between surrounding municipalities for people who'd like to serve on council, who might compare it to other municipalities exactly the way staff do, is a genuine consideration when you're trying to get good people on council. And so it makes sense to phase this in over time to minimize the kind of immediate shock. But we also know that the immediate duties have not actually increased in any sense. And so there's no reason that all has to be done at once.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rintoul, then Councillor Novick, and Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess just in part as a clarification, perhaps through you to the corporate officer or to yourself, was this matter not addressed previously, in that council had already passed a motion for this increase to take effect, and there was no delineation in terms of whether it would be immediate? As such, the intent would have been that it is immediate. Like, is this a reconsideration without going through the process?
The answer is no, and if I can try to clarify. So the mayor's increase was approved, and then subsequent to that, a motion was made to have it occur over 4 years, and then we landed today. So with regards to council, the council remuneration was approved, but there was no separate motion to give consideration of spreading it over 4 years. So this is the first time a motion has arisen to consider the matter.
Thank you. And again, I wasn't at the meeting to vote on this matter when it came forward with respect to the council increase. I'll use the opportunity to indicate that I would have been in favor of this on the basis that, I'm convinced no one is in this in a small municipality for the money. It's in part an opportunity to participate in the community and be of service in the community. It is a great time commitment. I'm not suggesting it's full-time. Obviously, I've got a full-time job aside from what I do at the town, but I enjoy doing it. So what the compensation has been has not been a key factor for myself. I think it's important to have clarity for people looking to run, however, what that compensation will look like, and that there's a fair process to review this on a 4-year basis, and that's what's been implemented. Having stated that, I have no concerns with phasing this in over a 4-year period personally, but I'll look to listen to hear what my colleagues may have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have Councillor Novick next, and then Councillor Duck.
Thank you, Mayor. I disagree with this, much as I disagreed with the earlier motion. I just look back at the policy, and the policy basically says that we're going to do this once every council term. We're going to go through this process of evaluating salaries in other like-minded municipalities, take the median, et cetera, and the process generates new wages for council. Nowhere in that policy does it say that we're going to implement this in a stepped way over 4 years. We did agree to this for the mayor. The mayor had his reasons for putting that forward, but I asked the pointed question, and the mayor was very clear that the intent was to do that for this time only, perhaps because it has been so long that there hasn't been a change, and the idea was not to do this as an ongoing thing as part of the policy. It would seem to me that if we really want to do this, then we have to go back and look at the policy.
I just clarify and make sure, again, that...
Sorry, I'll take this as a point of order. If you
Yeah,
can
point
state
of
it, and
order.
I will rule on your point of order.
Yeah, and I can just look at Terry's face, say that as the mover and the seconder, this is not something to continue. This is for exactly the same reason that the mayor was, that it's a big jump phased in over these 4 years, and then after that, it gets reviewed as one lump. Whatever people do in the next 4 years,
Okay.
I don't know, but it's not intended to go in the policy as a continuing phase-in every 4 years.
Sorry, I'm going to pause that. That is more of a point of privilege, and I'm going to take it as a clarification to what the speaker was saying, and it's been corrected in terms of the intention. There has been no intention spoken of at any time to have it continue to do this when the policy is next implemented in the fourth year of next term. Councillor Novak, I'll turn back to you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Correction noted. I still don't think it's necessary. Again, I feel that we should just follow the policy that we went through so much trouble to create and to have staff research and implement. I'm not sure why this is important. I don't think the impact to the taxpayers is significant. We're going to be castigated for increasing our salaries, regardless of what the number is. And in 2 years or even a year down the road, nobody's going to remember what those percentage increases were anyway. That's my point. Thank you.
Councillor Duck, please.
Yeah, I won't support this motion going forward. I think it's important to recognize the value of the councillors coming in, and I think given the amount of time that we each put in as councillors, we recognize that, as Councillor Rintoul said, we're not doing it for the money, and I think it's a small reflection that we bring that compensation up to the same and similar levels as our colleagues in the other municipalities around us, because Sydney is one of the lowest, if not the lowest. I think phasing it over 4 years is just going to create more challenges to do it. The mayor's given good rationale, and certainly he has the mayor's position has additional funding through the CRD, which does not occur for councillors. In most cases, I serve on three other external committees, which I do voluntarily and do not get any compensation for. So the time commitment is far more than public see us sitting here on a Monday night. And I think it's to recognize and support that effort. And it's not meant to be full-time, but certainly recognize the amount of time that does go into this. And I think it's important that we recognize that and bring this up to a level that is compensate with our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor Gannett.
Thank you, Mayor. Some very good points made at the table. Consideration for me, I think, is whether it's all at once or spread over 4 years. And Councillor Duck spoke to the extra organizations we serve on, and and other councillors going forward, because that's what we're speaking about, will serve on other committees and groups and will not be compensated for them. And we've also heard from the public about the rationale for doing it. And there's a greater complexity to the role today. Even from when I was first elected in 2018, I didn't have to deal with unhoused people with mental health and alcohol addictions issues in the community, accessibility, downloading of costs from provincial governments, and a little thing called, I've mentioned before, a pandemic. All these things and all these different aspects of the role have changed tremendously, and I can't speak to what other councillors do, but it is a significant amount of time, and I think that it needs to be reflected in the remuneration that people get, because they will, as I spoke to before when I approached this, first of all, it can be a financial barrier for people who may have to give up other jobs or other part-time jobs or whatever have you to serve in this capacity, to serve their community. So I was in favor of keeping it at what we had settled on, which was not 30,000, but was 43% of the I believe 61,872. So it worked out to 26,605 or something like that, starting at year one and then having the CPI increases. By doing it this way, you end up at the same place in year 4, but you definitely are foregoing some income over those 4 years by doing it this way. There will be a loss of income for people who serve in the future 4 years. Where I'm struggling with this particular is that I don't want to have a policy that's disjointed. I don't want to have a policy that's not aligned. So we've already said that we're going to have the mayor's pay over 4 years, and I want to make it as easy as possible on staff that's here now and staff that will be here in the future when they're having to work through this policy. It needs to be in alignment. You can't have trying to wordsmith how you're going to have a policy where we have one and then how do we word it so that this aligns with percentages, and it just creates a more difficult environment for staff to have to work through. So as much as I would support the initial motion, my prospects on this for the council moving forward and every council after is that we have a policy that's in alignment is a much more easier document for our staff to work with and future staff. So I will support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I think everyone has spoken. I'll look to call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duck and Councillor Novak are opposed. The motion carries. Councillor, I'm going to call a recess till 9 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, we'll reconvene now just after 9 o'clock, and I had it in front of me and I do again. So we've dealt with that motion arising, but we need to come back to policy number FN 025. It's been amended, but we do need a motion to approve it as amended. Sorry, I'm turning to Ms. Nelson first.
So yes, to clarify, with this change of implementing the increase over 4 years, council can still approve the policy with the exception of the first rate increase for 2027 to be implemented over 4 years, if that's okay. So moving forward, this policy would be what we follow, except with the first increase in 2027.
Would it be appropriate, Ms. Nelson, to say that the policy be approved as amended to reflect the phasing in of mayor and council remuneration?
Basically, yes. Yeah.
Okay. So if there be a member to make that motion? Councillor Duncan? No. Councillor Novak?
I'll make the motion to approve policy number FN 025, council remuneration review, be approved as amended to include a phasing in of salaries only for the year following, council years following 2027. For the 4 years.
Phased in for the next term.
The next term.
Okay.
Starting
Do we
2027.
have a seconder?
Second.
Councillor Duncan, any motivation?
I think we've motivated ourselves.
Councillor, thank you. Councillor Keefe?
Thank you. I'll probably vote in favor, although, just because I know we need to get this moving, but I do want to say that having gone through the process, and I know we had a process, is that I wouldn't go through the same process again. And the reason being, what we've heard from colleagues, and I completely 100% agree about the amount of work that goes into this job, the meetings, the community events. There's a lot of hours put into this. So I don't think that we're overpaid for what we do. What I have trouble with this policy is all this policy does is we look at what other municipalities are doing and we go with the median. And so the reason I have an issue with that, having gone through the process, is that we don't get a chance to tell our story. And so all we do is we go out, we look at what everybody else is doing, we pick the median, and we're done. So in retrospect, I know it's more work, but I would have liked the opportunity to go through some sort of process where we identify, here's the meetings that we have to go to, here's community events, here's all the other aspects of this role. And I think that would have been a more transparent way to go about it also, and give the public a better appreciation about the amount of work this role is and how much time we spend on it. So, you know, if I'm around next term, I might suggest that maybe we do something different with how we go about with council remuneration, so that we focus on what is going on in Sydney, what do we do, and letting the public have a window or some appreciation for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to the seconder.
I think I was just moving this because it formalizes everything we've just had. Just buttons it up.
Councillor Garnett, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just through you to Councillor O'Keefe, since you brought the point up, this is something you would expect council members to do. I don't think you'd want to add more on to staff, right?
Sorry, do you mean like?
Yeah, your
more
suggestion for next term, like would you be something that you would expect council as a whole would bring forward to the public, or are you suggesting more
You know
work,
what?
more work for staff on that?
I haven't thought that far ahead.
Alrighty,
Yeah.
thank you.
Just just kind of more the general concept is all.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I'm not sure how I'll vote on this, but I'll express my concern. And I was in support of the policy when it was formed, which led the process to using comparators. But it's the outcome that I have concern with, and not only the outcome for our municipality, but the outcome for quite frankly, the municipalities that use each other as comparators. And so what we found by using the comparator model, which is a model and used elsewhere, is that we have a 28% increase in the mayor's salary and a 38% increase in the councillor's salary. We're not the lowest in the region. And what will happen is another municipality is going to do this next. And what will happen is they'll use comparators, and it's in effect going to ratchet up to the next council that does that. And each council that does it, it just winds up ratcheting it up. And I think at some point, there actually has to be what would be called in the private sector a market analysis in terms of what is an appropriate rate for the position. I do know that in the province, there was a lengthy report done by a consultant for the city of Victoria in terms of council remuneration. And the challenge is when you go to do that, is that there are councillors who work full-time outside of their council responsibilities and councillors who don't. And so one councillor may spend more time, have more time available to spend in councillor activities than another councillor. So how do you find the benchmark, if you will, and that sort of thing? I just think that it's a challenge in terms of not doing a market analysis, but just going with this comparator model, which just continues to increase, and as we've seen, in fairly large increments. And whether we had done it 2 or 3 times over the last 10 or 12 years, or whether we do it once, it's going to have the same effect, that municipalities increase, and it just leads to continuous increases elsewhere. I'll turn to Mr. Edwards for a moment, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I do want to just highlight a few things. First and foremost, that this is a best practice that is adopted and promoted by the Union of British Columbia Municipalities, which represents all 162 municipalities and 27 regional districts. Secondly, doing a comparative analysis of comparable communities is effectively a market analysis of looking at what the market, your competitors effectively are doing. And for most small to medium-sized communities, the majority of council members are part-time positions, unlike the larger municipalities where they are considered to be full-time positions. And those larger municipalities do look at the workload and adjust their salaries for those council positions accordingly to be effectively competitive with the business communities within those the communities they serve as well. So you look at the larger municipalities in the Lower Mainland, for example, and the salaries that those councils receive, they're competitive with the private sector in some cases. And then the medium to small communities effectively can use those larger community salaries as a benchmark to peg themselves against. And so I do want to just end on the note that the method and the policy that was presented to council and approved by council is a best practice that is well accepted and adopted, not just in BC, but across the nation. And so I just want to make sure that we're clear on where this came from.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Opposed? Councillor Keefe and myself are opposed. The motion carries. We have one more motion, and that is that bylaw number 2300 to repeal council remuneration bylaw 2154. We gave first 3 readings of this bylaw at a previous meeting. We need to have a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, those in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Hisik, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we have concluded council questions and resolutions to date. I don't want to assume that there are no further questions or resolutions to come, but when we are done with all of them, the two resolutions that remain are to approve the general operating budget as amended and to approve the capital budget as amended, when you're ready.
Sorry, we have the first of the two motions here. Councillor Novak?
I'm ready to move that the general operating budget be approved as amended.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Hisik, before turning to movers, can you give us the final update on what the increase is, or does that need refinement?
The final increase for 2026 is 9.37%, and with the reductions in council remuneration, takes next year's increase down to about 9.05, and that number will be massaged a little bit.
Thank you. Councillor, the alternative movers?
Yeah, not much to motivate. I think we've had a pretty fulsome process, and we've certainly heard lots of opinions, and I think we've achieved the best we can under the circumstances.
Thank you. Nothing from the seconder, Councillor O'Keefe?
Thanks. So I'll support this going ahead. I just want to, I guess, reiterate to the public, and it's in my mind too, that as staff started off earlier mentioning that there's about 6% of this is kind of non-negotiable things related to police and fire and some of their costs downloaded from the province. So taking that 6 or so % off and then having another 3%, I think that's not too bad. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, I just want to comment to our residential and commercial taxpayers that we serve. We started with a tax increase of 12.4%, and we've worked hard with staff to bring it lower by just 3% to 9.4%. We removed several discretionary capital projects to help achieve this. I know there was a strong desire to get the tax increase lower. We know residents and businesses have faced many cost of living challenges in recent years, and current world events are causing a lot of uncertainty. However, the increase in protective services alone is 5.4%, which reflects the rising costs to keep our growing community safe. The remaining budget is an increase of 4.5%. A significant component is construction inflation, which affects municipalities adversely when we have so much infrastructure to maintain and replace. We see the development industry facing this challenge also. There is also a lingering component where we reduced taxes for residents and businesses during the pandemic, and we're making a catch-up to get to normal revenues. For the 6 years before last year's, Sydney's tax increases were amongst the lowest in the region. And in hindsight, we may have used surplus and reserves more than we should have. I'm confident we'll be getting back to more moderate increases in future years. With that, I'll look to call the question. All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Councillor Novak?
I move that the capital budget be approved as amended.
Second.
Any discussion?
Again, we've had a fulsome discussion. I think the public should be satisfied that we're able to get the tax increase down to single digits, and I'm happy with the results. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing? Seeing no further discussion, I'll call a question. Those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Hisik.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to quickly close up, what follows from here on in is that the utility rate bylaws will be brought forward for amendment at the next meeting, and the financial plan bylaw will be brought forward for 3 readings in late April and adoption in early May. And at the same time, the tax rates bylaw, which is based on this budget, will be brought forward for consideration. Thank you very much for all your hard work on this.
And thank you. And Council, we do have item 6B, which is Enhanced Flood Inundation Modeling and Mapping Project funding. Can we have there's 2 parts to the motion that can be moved together if someone would do so, please. Councillor Duncan?
Everybody's pointing at each other. I will move the recommendation that council support the town's grant application under the Climate Ready Plans and Processes funding stream offered by FCM to fund the development of a coastal flood hazard mitigation and adaptation plan. And 2, that council support the town's grant application under the Foundations of Disaster Risk Reduction funding stream offered by UBCM to fund the development of a coastal flood hazard mitigation and adaptation plan.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And I would look for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillors Duck and Novick. All in favor? We are adjourned. Thanks, Councillor Rintoul. Have a good evening. Thank you, staff.
Good night.